Here.
Thank you. Booker.
Here.
Namdi.
Here.
Josie.
Here.
Dan.
Here.
Elizabeth. Elizabeth. Cycle back. Carol.
Here.
Alex. Alex. Couldn't hear you. Couldn't hear you.
Yeah, Alex, you're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Thank you. Michael.
Here.
David.
Here.
Nick.
Here.
Chris.
Here.
Cynthia here. And one more time for Elizabeth. Okay, rolls taken.
All right. So 1 second, we're just setting up the other interpretation services. Should manage, and we want to add an interpreter. Right. Sorry, give us 1 second here. We're admitting folks. Okay. So while we're doing that, we're going to introduce this meeting. So this meeting is the third public hearing for the Northampton Policing Review Commission. So hello and welcome. This meeting is being held on Saturday, March 6th, 2021 at 11 a.m. and it's being held over Zoom. This meeting is being recorded and the translation to Spanish is available, as well as being transcribed through AI in English. We are a resident commission created by the mayor and city council in the response to the killings of African Americans by police nationally, as well as a recognition of systemic and historic inequalities and racism in policing and our society at large. This commission is part of a sweeping review of public policy by the mayor and city council and is charged with exploring the complex issues of public safety and making recommendations to transform how the city delivers safety services while ensuring community safety equitably and justly. We've taken our charge as a chance to improve the overall response to safety and not as a punitive reaction to the police. A guiding principle for this has been to ensure that the right people are responding to the right problems. We spend our time looking at the challenges and opportunities for increasing public safety across many lines and ways to improve what services are offered and how they're offered. Our recommendations are still being finalized, but they include the addition of a new Department of Community Safety that would allow for trained, unarmed peer response to mental health and substance use crisis, reallocations of funding for responsibilities to ensure safety needs are met, and safety is increased for all community members, including civilian flaggers to detail work, and policy changes to increase options for types of responders to caller needs, and opportunities to increase oversight and civilian participation in matters of safety. We've held over 55 public meetings with hours of public comment given, and we've also held 2 public hearings similar to this one, which gives us not only a chance to hear from you as we do in public comment for all of our meetings, but also respond to questions that you may have as well. It's been an important tool for the Commission to listen to the lived experiences and perspectives of residents, visitors, workers, business owners, and those who have direct experience with the Northampton Police Department. Forward to today's final public hearing comments. To help facilitate this, our meeting today will be structured much like the previous 2 meetings. And we have several meeting parameters for this to make this go smoothly. Every hour, we will take a 5-minute break as announced by the facilitator, and we will repeat these parameters at the beginning of each session, as we know people will be coming and going throughout the session. We acknowledge your time to speak to the Commission by seeing the raised hand in Zoom. If you want to speak, you'll need to use that feature to raise You'll need to use that feature to raise your hand by clicking on reactions and clicking raise hand. For some versions of Zoom, the raise hand feature may be in the participants panel as well. If you're calling in on a phone, you want to press *9 to raise your hand. And when you're called on, press *6 to unmute. If you have difficulty raising your hand, please use the chat feature to reach out to the host so that we can assist you. Each speaker will be given 7 minutes of time to speak or to ask questions. Please note that the response to your question is part of your 7 minutes. So if you have questions, please ask them up front so that we can respond appropriately. You'll be notified by the facilitator when the 7 minutes are up and asked to finish your thought. There is no obligation to speak for the full 7 minutes. If you agree with something that has already been said, you can let us know that you agree without restating the entire comment. Please try to refrain from speaking fast. Our translators need a few extra seconds to do their work and ensure the accuracy of that work. If you feel comfortable providing your name and location of residence, that is much appreciated, but we understand if you want to protect your confidentiality. If you would prefer to write your comment, you can always email the commission. We'll paste our email address in the chat, but it's ncoffeemore@northamptonma.gov. If you do send us an email, we will all get them and we will read them. And finally, we recognize your experience and the work of this commission can elicit strong emotions. We respectfully ask that you consider the presence and dignity of every person attending today, as well as the commitment to this process that everyone here has expressed by being here and participating. While you're making comments, please keep them directed to the commission and not at one another. Name calling, derogatory language, threatening, or calling out individuals will not be accepted in today's hearing. These behaviors will be interrupted if they occur. Anyone engaging in these behaviors will be given one warning, and then they will be removed from the meeting. All right. With that said, it looks like we've got a number of folks who are already here and have their hand raised. Again, we're going to go in the order in which hands were raised. And so we will be calling on, the first person is a phone number ending in 7081. Okay, so phone number ending in 7081, if you want to press *6 to unmute. Okay, might be having some trouble there, so we're going to go to the next person, and we'll circle back to you for 7081. So the next person is call-in user number 2. I'm going to ask to unmute. You should be able to press *6 to unmute.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is Jane Doe. I spoke to you on the 11th of February about reporting a rape to the Northampton Police Department and having received a very positive experience, a very trauma-informed experience, a very victim-centered response. The officer made me feel very respected and safe while addressing the crime. I've been looking at the minutes of the commission, and I just wanted to go over some of the things I noticed. So on the 9th of November, Javier said that he did not believe the police should be involved with domestic violence or sexual assault. Dr. Bush advised Javier that they are the most violent calls, and that this was followed up that day by Alex reporting on research that decriminalized domestic violence was emerging. None of this really addressed the really danger that exists for victims or the law, which includes the Abuse Prevention Act, which was passed in 1978. On the 10th of November, Lois Ahrens referenced the defund public hearings, saying that victims had bad experiences with the police. That was a very limited group of the population that didn't discuss the positive experiences that were had. Chief Casper told the commission that the department is not at full capacity with 9 vacancies out of a total of 11, which is 9 less officers available to save my life as a victim of domestic violence when a second felony violation of a 209 restraining order occurs. On the 17th of November, Nnamdi asked again for information on crime in the city and wanted to improve the integrity of the data with independent verification. Still, this has not been done regarding victims. On the 23rd of November, Lois Aaron said crime is going down from Northampton to New York. That's actually false because crimes against police have skyrocketed, as have incidents of domestic violence. On the 24th, Dan admitted the commission still hadn't done sufficient outreach, and I know this to be true. Javier continued calling the Northampton Police Department white supremacist. This is in your minutes, again and again and again. And yet he didn't have a plan to invite people to join the conversation. On the 1st of December, the commission was advised by a number of people in the public that the police have a certain number per capita, but that the city is below that number. On the 2nd of December, Elizabeth said, police response is not helpful during rape and sexual assault, which is not to say charging of crimes shouldn't be the end point. She said, how you get there is important for the safety of survivors, end quote. In fact, the police secure the victim, assist in filing the restraining order that protects the victim. No police, no protection. The batterer, who continues to stalk, harass, intimidate, and harm the victim and her children, is brought to justice by the police. And unless Elizabeth herself is a victim, publicly saying that the response is not helpful, it's false, and it's a direct threat to the safety of victims. Police response is 100% necessary and is the only thing that stops batterers and rapists, not to mention the sex traffickers, child molesters, pedophiles, sex offenders who reside in Northampton. On the 10th, Cynthia noted of 3,500 calls, 341 for domestic violence. That is crime, and it exists in Northampton. You know, and you've heard from commissioners that these are the most dangerous calls that officers face. You know that, you've heard it. Elizabeth talked about the spike in domestic violence during the lockdown, but doubled down that bad things happen when police become involved in domestic violence calls, claiming that survivors are stripped of control over their safety. This is false. By helping victims with restraining orders, protecting us as we enter courts, liaising with the district attorney's office, we stop the batterer from harming us and others with the police. The officer protected me when I was in danger. The officer saw what happened. The officer found the sex offender's quarry, saw multiple other incidents and cases that this batterer had been involved in. The police officer and his response was the most helpful thing for me. I am a victim. Elizabeth said not to focus on highly escalated area where survivors who report directly to the police, as that's not how it happens. That's false. That's exactly how happened. That's exactly what happened to me. Elizabeth wanted third-party reporting to police. I have no idea if she's familiar with the law. The most important thing to do is fill out the affidavit and report it. It is in that statement that it's needed in court. The rapist is brought to justice. It's ridiculous that people don't understand the law that are on this commission. How are victims supposed to be safe? On the 11th of January, this commission still hadn't heard from domestic violence agencies. Cynthia had heard from the DA that domestic violence calls are the most dangerous calls. Chief Casper testified about the laws. She told you what happens with officers and explained how dangerous it is. These are the most dangerous calls. We need the police. They need to be armed. Chief Casper told you about terrible characterizations in your early preliminary report about first responders to sexual assault. She told you how complex responding to these cases is, including the arrest, the involvement with DCF when children are there, hours involved, the violations of restraining orders. She also explained the uniquely trained members of her department, including senior staff that are skilled in family violence. Also absent from this commission's research is data on date rape at colleges. In 2012, 4 men gang raped an 18-year-old student at UMass, and there are people on this commission that are involved with UMass, and this was never discussed. Crime occurs in Northampton and in this region. Domestic violence occurs in Northampton. A murder regarding domestic violence occurred in Northampton. The commission allows racist inflammatory comments about our police officers, allowing them to be called fascists. Josie and Javier continue to call our police white supremacists.
So thank you. That is your time. Please finish your thought.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you. So the next person, we're going to try and circle back to the phone number 7081. So I'm going to again try and unmute you here, and you should be able to unmute yourself by pressing *6. Okay. I'm going to try one more time. The phone number ending 7081. Okay, so we will cycle back. So the next person in line at this point is Abolish NPD.
Oh, Dan, I think 7081 just unmuted.
Hello.
Oh, they did. All right, I apologize. We're going to go with them. So phone number 7081. Go ahead and speak.
Yes, you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes. My name is Hildegard Friedman, living at 35 Fruit Street, Cahill Public Housing in Northampton, apartment G 68. I have been very, very proud of this subcommittee from the time that I began to listen, and I am very impressed by your concern that the government may establish a special committee and that you may be at the helm, Booker Bush and Javier, of that committee. I would like to make a suggestion that you include Jim Nash, by virtue of the fact that he has been with the council for many years. He is not what you would call a politician. He is a very fine, honest, kind person. And I believe that he would add to that. And I will be listening as long as I am alive. I'm moving to Lexington by virtue of Northampton housing and my position, Dr. Darren Rosenberg in Lexington Spalding, but I don't know when, but I will not leave. Thank you for a very, very outstanding series of months and very, very hard work, Javier and Bush. Thank you. I'm finished.
Naftali, did you need something, or the interpreters?
The interpreters are having some kind of difficulty, Dan.
That's fine. Okay. All right. All right, so the next person up is going to be Abolish. I think we can hear the interpreters now in the main session.
And can we just remind folks who have their hands raised, not in the reaction section. Some people are raising their hands right now in the tiles.
All right, I'm going to take 1 second to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I just want to say to folks that are raising your hand, the proper way to do that is through Zoom in the reaction section, to raise your hand there so that you can get into the queue. Just a reminder of that.
Okay. All right, so I think we're good. We've got that settled. All right. So the next person is Abolish NPD. I'm going to ask you to unmute. All right, we're going to try one more time. Abolish NPD. There we go. The person Abolish NPD, are you there? Okay. So we'll circle back. The next person on the list is David Power to the People.
Hi there. My name is David, he, him pronoun. I want to thank the commissioners for the excellent work they're doing and for being willing to listen and give volunteer time to do this today. Weekend only comes around once a week, so thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want to give my full ID or my location out of concern for safety and privacy, but I am a resident in the area and I do work in Northampton. I'll try to keep this to 3 minutes or less. I have not had direct confrontation with Northampton police. I have had confrontation with police negatively in other cities, but since this is about Northampton police, I will just share this one story. I was in the downtown area the other day and overheard somebody sort of loudly calling for all of the homeless people to be kicked out from in front of City Hall. And a couple of Northampton Police Department officers engaged with them and started talking with them off to the side about how, yeah, we really agree. It's awful. They're all down here. We can't really do anything about it, though. They won't let us. So it's just as kind of distressing to me that the police would have a will to want to go in and remove people who are just trying to survive when they can't, for whatever reason, get access to affordable housing and shelter, like there's some kind of pest in the community. I thought that was distressing. I want to encourage NPRC to stand up to bullies who are using threats, violence, and intimidation in this kind of meeting to try to sway our system and maintain the status quo and alter who's welcome in our community and for whom the system is intended to work. It's awesome that you guys are centering recommendations on folks in the community who are the most impacted by police practices. I applaud that and want to continue to encourage it. I'd like to see more unarmed responses and trainings and de-escalation for unarmed officers. I'd like to see a focus on housing first approaches to addressing the houseless. I'd like to see the decriminalization of survival and houselessness on our streets. I'd like to see unarmed civilians responding to drug crises and domestic violence situations. If there's no firearms or weapons involved, why would we bring a weapon into the midst of it and further escalate it? I'd like to see funding redirected from NPD to education programs, which should be free, frankly, through postgraduate education. We'd like to see medical services funded as well. The NPD could shift the focus then to responding to truly violent crime, where an armed response is appropriate in a measured context. And then they could also continue to do things that are an excellent service to the community, like safety seat installations for people with kids, directing traffic, that sort of thing. We could also use some of the funding currently going to NPD to give reparations to Black, Indigenous people of color, LGBT people, houseless people, people who have been impacted by policing historically in a detrimental way. And that would help us to forge accountability to our community. And in closing, I'd just like to say, please reduce the size, the scope, and the power of the Northampton Police Department, and let's use police funding to help any law enforcement officers who might face the termination of their job because of that defunding, with training to help get them into another field with a good paying job so that they're not out on the street themselves. We're not looking to punish anybody. We're just trying to do better for our community. And I will cede back the remainder of my time. Thank you for hearing me out.
All right, thank you very much. The next person on the list is Lily P. Can you try and unmute again, Lily?
Yeah, I just like to go a little later, sorry. So I'm gonna unraise my hand and then raise it again.
Okay. So the next person is Steve Jones.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I hope you can hear me.
Yep, you're good to go.
I want to speak in terms of supporting changing the practices of the Northampton Police Department. I think the multiple assaults on Black individuals by police departments, not Northampton, but elsewhere, underline the need for rethinking how police departments operate. I particularly want to speak in favor of a community responder model, which has been used in some communities where people who are more social workers than armed police officers respond to many of the calls to 911. Those in particular, I think that's been very successful in Eugene, Oregon. I would endorse that approach of community responders as something that should be considered for Northampton. And I want to thank the members of the commission for all of the hard work in trying to sort out this very complicated issue of how to improve the services of the police department, how to transfer some of the budget that supports the Northampton Police Department to other models like community responders so that we have a better response to crises in Northampton. Thank you. I'm done.
All right, thank you very much. So we're going to go to the next person with their hand raised, which is Riley. Sorry about that. Hang on a moment. Here we go.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. So my name is Riley. I live in Northampton, and also I'm an advocate for the Wildflower Alliance. I work at AFIA, which is a crisis or a respite in Northampton, where we offer like peer support for people who are experiencing what they define as moments of crisis. And I guess first I just wanted to thank the commissioners for all the time that you've put in to help move Northampton away from policing and towards community supports that are not rooted in force, coercion, and violence. I guess I'm here just to try to give voice to some of the experiences that community members in Northampton have had in their interactions with the Northampton police. And I also wanted to try to give voice to what people named as just like what they really needed in moments of crisis, and ways that the police did or did not meet those needs. One thing we asked the community is ask people to share their experiences with police in moments of emotional distress, crisis. And someone said they pulled me over in my car because of a call they received from a therapist. They actually pulled me over when I was already en route to the hospital. Someone else shared that they've had many difficult interactions with the police. Some have gone better than others. I can say that the officers who have CIT training are better. and still not ideal. I've seen officers jump the gun on using unnecessary force or assume physical force must be utilized from the get-go, in which case the police need to be de-escalated. Someone else shared that ServiceNet called the Northampton police on them to be on standby because they're about to tell that person bad news at the group home where they lived. And I guess the staff at the group home wanted the police ready to take the person to the hospital, to Cooley. And they said that before they even heard the news, they saw the lights and 2 cruisers outside their window. So they were worried that something was wrong and went downstairs to ask the cops why they were there. And that's when they were told that their best friend was dead and that the police had come because the staff at the group home were worried that this person would kill themselves upon hearing the news. And the cops were there to take them to the hospital. And then we kind of posed the question to people to ask them if they felt like the police were responding to their needs in those moments of distress or crisis. Someone said no. I was forced out of my car, which I had to abandon on the side of the road, and forced to take an ambulance to the hospital, which I was billed over $1,000 for. And even though my insurance paid them and I paid the bill, I have never been reimbursed, creating excessive stress. Someone else responded, my needs, the police once locked me up when I was in a pretty extreme state and then sent me before a judge in shackles and an orange jumpsuit. The one person who responded to my needs was the bailiff at court, who must have realized I wasn't in the best space, asked for my name, and had the judge call me next so I could get out of there. When someone is feeling overwhelmingly anxious and confined already, the worst possible thing to do is put us in a cell for our own good. Someone else said, no one responded to my needs in that moment, only ServiceNet's worries, ServiceNet's liability concerns, etc. Then we asked, can you imagine what other supports would be more useful in the moments you described above, moments of crisis? Someone said, ask me what was going on and where I was headed, allow me to drive myself and follow me. Someone else said, maybe someone to talk to instead, someone who actually knows how to listen and partner with me. Someone else said, actual human compassion, telling me the news first, asking me what I needed first, asking me how I feel. Someone else said, no intervention, peer discussion. Someone else said, someone to sit down and talk to me about what was going on inside. There is more to the picture than meets the eye. I would have benefited if they just dug deeper. Also, made sure I was safe in all aspects. And another question we asked is ask people to share what other options they can imagine for getting support when they were in moments of mental, emotional distress, crisis. Someone said more places that are voluntary in nature, where they don't lock people up against their will, more spaces that value real human connection over traditional power structures and dynamics. Why are there not more places like that in existence? One of the big reasons that I've seen 911 called on people who are struggling with emotional distress and extreme states is that even if the situation is calm, what's the next step? Where can a person land that doesn't put their life and liberty in jeopardy? Someone else responded, funding for 24/7 peer-run warm lines, peer-led crisis response teams to meet people in distress rather than cop or social worker response. Someone else responded, treat them as equal and their mental anguish as legitimate medical situation or in need of situational support. Someone else mentioned unarmed professionals trained in mental health with a wide range of equipment and personnel. Do they have moving straps and a ladder if they need to? Oh, sorry, I'm just like getting lost in the questions. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to share. I just kind of wanted to use this space and time to give voice to some of the of the ways in which people in this community have been impacted by police, and the ways that police have responded to people who have been needing support, needing more support than they were getting, but maybe felt like there weren't other options beyond the police, so, or traditional like mental health service providers. So that's all I have to share. Thank you.
All right, with 4 seconds to spare. It's pretty impressive. So the next person is actually someone that was raising their hand physically. So Jenny Fleming Ives, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
You're really, really, really soft.
Okay, can you hear me now? No?
Not really.
Oh, okay, hang on. How about now?
There we go.
Better?
There we go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, okay, hello. Thank you. So my name is Jenny Fleming Ives. I'm known also as Jenny Fleming, 15 Drydes Green, Northampton. I want to first say thank you so much, Commission, for doing this work, and especially for having this hearing on a Saturday morning. I haven't been able to join the other times because of my work schedule, so I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I want to speak to from my lived experience of in my work. I am totally supportive of the work that is going to be done by something called the Community Care, Community Safety, Department of Community Safety. I spent my entire professional life working with folks on the margins, the houseless, both in the UK and in this country at First Churches in Northampton with Cathedral in the Night, and also in my work in a public health care agency that is situated downtown. And I want to stress that I'm speaking personally here. I'm not speaking on behalf of the agency, but I have spent my life working in downtown Northampton, and that has with folks of the diverse situations, a wide variety of people. I'm also responsible for a diverse, small, young staff, and I've had many instances where I have had to call the police because of unknown perceived dangers, and I've had rapid response. So I'm wanting to emphasize that I'm concerned if there's a drastic reduction in the policing, that rapid response to unknown situations will get lost. I think this is a very complicated issue. And you're doing a good job getting all of the perspective. But from my lived experience, where I have had to be in a clinic setting after dark with clients and staff with threats that were of unknown nature, and I had to call for support, I found that the police in Northampton were there for us immediately. And I'm very grateful for that. And I do not want that to get lost, that rapid response where we're really not sure what's going on and that people are not feeling safe. Clients are not feeling safe. So as I said, I'm speaking personally here. I'm not speaking on behalf of my agency, but I've had much lived experience of dealing with difficult situations, dangerous situations. And I just want to note that. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. So the next person is Sophie.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. My name is Sophie. I'm a local citizen. And actually, I'm going to see if my video, great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to the commissioners for taking the time this morning. I wanted to make a brief statement as a survivor of sexual assault, a clinical social worker, and a prior crisis clinician for Hampshire County. I wanted to really support you in continuing to push for change. It's really important that we do some serious investment in what is going to make our community safe. And there is lots of evidence all over the country that the safest communities are not the communities that have the highest rate of policing or the most police presence, and that rather are the safest communities are those that are being invested in as far as access to housing, access to mental health services, access to education, all of those things. I don't think I need to explain all of that, but so just really wanted to emphasize that the importance of the importance of investing in other services for the communities is just as important, and that our community can still be safe with the decreased funding of the Northampton Police Department. So thank you so much for taking the time, and really encourage you to continue to push for peer-led programming and other services that will actually make for a safe community, and not focus so much on the police presence, because that doesn't actually make for a safer community, especially for people who are not white. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. So the next person is Jay Flightman.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much for to the commission for an opportunity to speak to you here. My name is Jay Flightman. I'm in Florence, prior school committee member of the city of Northampton, and the prior chairman of the Board of Health of the city of Northampton. I just want to make a couple of comments here. In terms of my own interaction with the police, it's been kind of limited. It's been limited to 2 house break-ins, in which the city of Northampton Police Department was very cordial and arrived in a timely basis. Other interactions, myself, of course, are getting traffic tickets and parking tickets, but that's another issue. I am a physician in town, and I've had an opportunity over the years to have several police men and police women from the Northampton Police Department, as well as other police departments in the area, as patients. And over those years, I've had an opportunity to hear them speak of their lives and their experiences in the police department and in service to the community. And they actually have some rather horrific tales to tell in terms of things that they've experienced, things they've seen, the fear that they've had in terms of conflict and armed danger. And so one thing I want to say is that we need to be cautious about minimizing these people and their families in terms of their experiences, and the fact that there is, even in this little community, serious crime which the police deal with, and they see things that the rest of us are fortunate not to have to see while we're sitting in our living rooms. Also, I just want to make the comment that I have not a lot of faith in this process. I think the selection of this committee, of this commission, was not transparent by the city council and by the mayor's office. I think from what I read in the newspaper that this commission is represented by people who are of the political left without more moderates or conservatives being on this commission. I'm concerned about the fact that there seems to be no police input into the deliberations of this commission. I'm also going to want to say that I don't have a lot of faith in the city council's deliberation. This is a city council that with 5 minutes of thought, because they were yelled at on a Zoom meeting, cut $800,000 in the police budget. A city council that even the town of Amherst thought was ridiculous in terms of that decision-making process. And then just the last comment that I want to make is we have to recognize the fact that cities across the United States that have done this, that have cut police departments, have had big spikes in violent crime. And very recently, I think we all saw in the news that Minneapolis refunded their police department and with everything that they had cut, only to find the fact that a very sizable portion of their police department had left, and they can no longer find the police to rehire after a precipitous action. So I think that's just the sum total of my comments, and I appreciate the time to present in front of this commission.
Thank you. So the next person is Wendy Foxman.
Thank you. I'm going to read my comments so I keep them in the time limit. Wendy Foxman, Ward 7 in Leeds. So thank you for the hard work and lots of time you've put in. And it's important work, and I appreciate that. I've been following the conversation about the Northampton Police Department budget since last year's council budget meetings, attending most of those meetings and most of the Policing Review Commission and subcommittee meetings. I just left a morning meeting of a group of which I am a member, active bystander trainers in the United States, Canada, and the UK. We had a discussion about building community capacity and response to situations where harm is occurring. I see a strong connection between that work and what I've witnessed growing in our community and discussed by the Review Commission: community self-reliance, response, and care. I strongly support the Review Commission's proposal for the creation of a Department of Community Safety. And I see opportunities through the department, in addition to many services you've already discussed, for community self-reliance and support, such as training community members in mediation and active bystandership. I do not see the Police Review Commission being in an informed place to recommend budget cuts in the police department. This requires further study, which I think it should be studied. I think recommending the city appropriate funds for a Department of Community Safety is an excellent first step. Thank you.
Oops, sorry, it was muted there. Thank you very much. So the next person is Jalen.
Hello, my name is Jalen. I'm from Ward 1. I guess I'll sum up a little bit of the background first before I get into the key issues. I really think there is a major problem with police responding to those with mental illness. I suffer from complex post-traumatic stress disorder from sexual abuse as a child, but I also suffer from a great deal of trauma from care providers and the police as an adult that further my entry into the system. But I also suffer from non-epileptic seizures and traumatic brain injury from electroconvulsive therapy that gets portrayed by the police as me faking or just all my mental health issues. But I have come to them in the past for burglaries and stuff, and they've laughed at me, asked me if I wanted to go see Crisis, and told me that, oh, that person was just a lowly level 3 sex offender. Don't worry about them. I do have a few officers that I believe are outstanding people, but there are several, especially in the day shift, who are very traumatizing. I have been dragged out of the emergency room at Cooley in the past due to me being blacked out and unconscious due to a milk allergy. They're just being told that I'm refusing to leave, but the officer, once I regained consciousness in the police car, the officers were swearing at me. And they eventually said that they don't give a fuck about Detective Kerouac's mental health trainings. They're going to do whatever they want. So that gives you their viewpoint on mental health. I've also been a patient up on the West 5 psychiatric unit of Cooley Dickinson, and the police responded there once where I was in 4-point restraints, and the officer aimed a less than lethal shotgun at my chest just 3 feet away, which would have been very damaging, which was very traumatizing. DMH did step in, and they have banned officers from bringing weapons onto a locked psychiatric unit. But my major 2 points that I want to bring up are about wellness checks. Crisis usually won't call the police anymore for wellness checks, especially for me, because they know, because of my traumas with the police, that if I'm threatening to hurt myself in my apartment and I know the police are coming, I'll have a knife on me because I know the police are coming. I'll grab one to harm myself or to get them to shoot me, because they'll come in, break the door open, aim their guns at me. One time I was dissociating in a trauma-free state on my bed with a knife held against myself, and they had to kind of pry the knife away from me, from my chest, with a baton. And the supervisor came in and said, "That's it. I'm sick of this shit. We're not dealing with her anymore with her mental health stuff. We're charging her this time." And my court-appointed lawyer wouldn't fight it in court because he says the police lie under oath all the time. And so I now have assault with a deadly weapon quaff on my record, as well as other assaults and batteries that were unwarranted on my record that permanently affect my employment. And it just traumatizes me even more. So the next time I had a wellness check, again, they come barging in, aiming their shotguns, threatening to shoot. That time they were able to talk me down with some of the better officers, but there are quite a bit that do not care about talking down. They like the confrontation, or they're just sick of us faking our issues. And then they also took half of my hobby supplies, which I guess I could see as a safety measure, but they only took half of them, not all of them. So really, it just put me back financially and took away one of my coping measures. But I've also met with Detective Lieutenant Kerouac on this issue in the past, and hasn't really helped with much of anything. Because I've suffer from sundowning because of my ECT sessions. And one time I walked in the police station because I was having total memory loss and I didn't know where I was, and I needed help. And the officer just mocked me, saying that, "Oh, you're fine. You just always Google stuff and believe the worst thing and start acting like it, like your seizures and stuff." And I might add that I am an honor student at HCC on the Phi Theta Kappa Honor Society, and that officer was also Googling that information as I was telling him that. So I have a great deal amount of trauma that just increases my negative interactions. That is all. Thank you.
All right, thank you for sharing that. At this point, we're reaching an hour in, so we'll take a 5-minute recess. And again, once we get back, we'll come back with go over the meeting parameters and begin again. So thank you, everybody. Please do not leave the meeting, especially if you have your hand raised. You don't want to leave the meeting, you'll lose your order. So continue to hold out there. We'll reconvene at 12:03. for the folks who just joined us, we are taking a break. We'll reconvene in about a minute.
I just want to welcome everyone to the third public hearing of the Northampton Policing Review Commission. For those of you who didn't start with us at 11, we just want to update you a little bit with some of our meeting parameters this morning. First of all, every hour we're going to take a 5-minute break. We just included that for our second hour. And we will announce that break, and we will repeat these parameters at the beginning of each session, as we know people will be coming and going throughout today's session. We will acknowledge your time to speak to the commission by seeing the raised hand feature in the reactions tab on Zoom. If you want to speak, please use that feature by clicking reactions and raising your hand, the raise hand function. We will call on you in the order your hand is raised, and we already have individuals whose hands have been raised. If you're calling in a phone, please press 9 to raise your hand, and then when you're called on, press press star 9 to raise your hand, and when you're called on, press star 6 to continue. If you have difficulty raising your hand, please use the chat feature to reach out to the host so that we can assist. Each speaker will be given 7 minutes of time to speak or to ask questions directly to the commission. Please note that the response of any of your questions is going to be part of that 7 minutes. So if you have a question, please ask them up front so that we can respond appropriately. You'll be notified by the facilitator, and this hour it'll be me, when the 7 minutes are up, and you'll be asked to finish your thought. There is no obligation to speak for the full 7 minutes, and if you agree to something that has already been said, you can let us know that you agree without restating the entire comment. Please try to refrain from speaking fast. We have fantastic translators here who need a few extra seconds to do their work to ensure the accuracy of their work as well. If you feel comfortable providing your name and location of residence, that is much appreciated, but we understand if you want to protect your confidentiality. If you prefer to write your comment and email it to the commission, you can also do that as well. I think we're going to try to post that email address in the chat. You will see the email address of the individual who will send those comments to all of us, and I assure you that we read every single submission. And finally, we want to recognize your experience, and the work of this commission can elicit some strong emotions. So we respectfully ask that you consider the presence and the dignity of every person attending today, as well as the commitment to this process that everyone here has expressed by being here and by participating. While you are making your comments, please keep them directing to the commission and not to one another. Name calling, derogatory language, threatening or calling out individuals will not be accepted in today's hearing. These behaviors will be interrupted by the facilitator if they occur. So anyone engaging in these behaviors will be given one warning and then before being removed from the meeting. So I'm going to start now with the next person who is up, and again, it's a 7-minute period, and that is Marian Ben Artsdale. Marian? Are you there, Marian? Can you unmute on your end? Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am, first of all, a thank you to the commission for all of your hard work on this, with the goal of creating a more comprehensive approach to public safety. for all members of the community. I support new initiatives. With adequate funding for including mental health providers and perhaps peer advocates as a part of the new response team for public safety. At the same time, I feel it's critical to maintain adequate funding for the police department to perform the roles that they are best trained to do, and to provide ongoing training and continuing growth for them. A stable NPD needs to attract more women and people of color to strengthen community trust. I think that one of the unfortunate impacts of the last round of budget cuts was that we lost some newer people who were going to be hired who did bring more diversity to the force. So going forward, I would support some of the ideas that ask that the planning be done with the police department as well as the committees and the city administration, so that we can work together to plan the next steps forward in a way that really builds the strength of this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Marian. Just having a little trouble getting here. Okay, next person up is Liz. Liz, I'm going to unmute you and then you can unmute yourself. Liz.
Hello, my name is Liz. I used to live in Northampton for a number of years. I have recently moved to East Hampton, but I still have many ties, both professionally and personally, with Northampton. I would like to thank this commission for giving me the opportunity to tell about my experience with the Northampton Police Department. In the late 2000s, I lived in Northampton with my then partner. I came home from my work and my partner was intoxicated. They fell down a flight of stairs in our apartment and we thought that they broke their foot. So I called 911 because I didn't have a car at the time and I requested an ambulance. Unbeknownst to me at the time, when an ambulance arrives, a police officer also does. This police officer arrived way before the ambulance did. It was actually a narcotics detective by the name of Fabiano. They arrived, as I understood it, because my downstairs neighbor was suspected of dealing weed. They tried to gain entry to that apartment first before realizing that it was me who called for the ambulance. When they entered our apartment, Fabiano was very aggressive and instigated problems with the encounter. He tried to PC my partner out of their home when I told him that that was not something that he could do. You can't put somebody in protective custody, remove them from their home. He got agitated. And one thing led to another. Eventually, pepper spray was deployed and my partner was taken away in handcuffs and was not received the medical treatment that I had requested. To this day, I think about that incident and how differently it could have gone if a police officer was not there, especially not one that was trying to gain entry to another apartment so that he could look for drugs. I really applaud what this commission is doing. I firmly believe that the police institution in this country is rooted in white supremacy, and we need to eradicate that from our society. Thank you so much. Have a pleasant rest of your meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Our next speaker is Sean.
Thank you, Cynthia. My name is Sean. I am a Northampton resident. I don't want to get more specific than that at this meeting. But yeah, I just wanted to take a pause, I guess even for myself, just to think about the amount of work that all of you on the commission have put into this and the amount of stories of pain that you've listened to. And I know some of you probably are also holding stories of pain too, around interactions with the police and just being in this world. So yeah, I'm just trying to take a moment to sit with all that. Yeah, and I did want to say, in addition to being a current resident of Northampton and someone who's lived in this area for 15 years, I've also been an advocate for people in the mental health system for 10 of those years. So I've had a lot of experiences with people in really, uncomfortable and scary moments. And I have not resorted to calling the police in those moments. There's a lot of reasons why I haven't. And so I wanted to share just not individual stories, but just generally that I've been a part of alternatives to suicide groups in this area, where I've heard a lot of stories of people who, when trying to get support through the emotional pain that they were in, similar to somewhat what past callers have also spoken to, they were treated with disrespect, sometimes violence. And so I'll speak from the place, at least that I know about the world in Northampton, that I really am looking forward to creative ways that we can reimagine community support and community safety. That goes for people that are dealing with trauma, that are dealing with extreme states of being, that are dealing with suicidal thoughts, that are dealing with domestic violence, that are dealing with all sorts of pain. I know that there are probably good people on the force, quote unquote, but I don't think the system allows those good people to stay good for long, if I'm going to be honest. And so I really look forward to the ways that this commission has allowed us to reimagine some of those things. I just also want to say on a personal level, I'm someone who's a suicide attempt survivor. I'm just going to be open about that. And while I haven't had the police called on me in ways of a wellness check, I have dealt with police and security guards in hospital settings and have felt like that has added to the trauma that I've experienced in those moments. And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say exactly at this meeting. I've been to a lot of these meetings and I'm pretty tired. I'm sure a lot of you are as well. But I guess I'm looking forward to, in Northampton and places in this area, ways that people that, have experienced harm, Black folks, Indigenous people of color who've been harmed by the police, folks with disabilities, folks with psychiatric labels, people that are houseless, can really lead these conversations. And I know how hard that is too. I know how well the commission has tried to solicit these perspectives and has. And it's really scary to come to meetings like this and bear, stories of pain, knowing that, people could receive repercussion. So I look forward to more opportunities to help shape, how to imagine community safety in Northampton. And as someone who's been part of an organization called the Wildflower Alliance for 10 years, a lot of us have some experience with how we've actually been practicing responding to pain and violence without police, because we know how much that can lead to pain and trouble and potentially violence and death for people that we care about. Yeah, so I just want to say, I guess, end by saying, thank you to the commissioners who have been brave enough to share some opinions that are important and maybe will put you in the line of fire, so to speak, but rhetorically. And I'm also grateful for people on this call that were brave enough to share about their own experiences. And I hope people who are on this call can respect that enough to not do disrespect to those people. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Sean. Next speaker is Jose Adastra. Jose.
Hello. I just want to take a second and thank everyone on the commission and I don't think they're here, but even the people that resign. I know how many hours you put in, and now at first I was a little bummed out that I didn't get a seat on it, and now I'm very relieved a little bit because it looked like a lot of work. And I just want to, really express gratitude for all the time, unpaid time you're putting in. I'm also, when I look at the commission, I think it's really diverse, and that, not only am I relieved because it's a huge commitment that you've put in, but you're all very qualified and from different fields that are relevant to contributing to the solution away from state violence. So, I appreciate it. I just want to say, there have been some testimonies, and I want to say the police occasionally may provide protection for white women and property owners. That's totally possible. That's what they were designed to do, but just for them. And the Northampton police, they are a white supremacist institution, and all police are white supremacist institutions. We have cops here in this town who are quoted, cops in charge of hiring and training, as saying, you should be pulling over ethnically altered vehicles all day. And whose, family on Facebook publicly displays hate symbols like the Confederate flag and Blue Lives Matter. So we know where these people are from. Everything is on the internet. You can search for it. There's been national coverage of them. They are racist, and their families are racist, and they're domestic abusers. Another officer, they requested for him not to have weapons in his house and a restraining order against him, and he's wrongfully arrested judges, and he consistently harasses the houseless population. There you go. That for anyone that wants to feel safe, is that the guy that you want to show up? The guy whose wife doesn't even want him to have guns or be around him? Not me. And I don't want the racist guy to come either. But, if feeling safe for you is being able to call someone with a gun, how could it possibly be these racist domestic abusers? Not, we're here because there's no transparency and there's no accountability. If they weren't abusers, we wouldn't be complaining, and we wouldn't have all the scars and traumas that we have. So for anyone saying there's no problem here, maybe you should do a little more research about the people who are employed by the police department first. And, I want to chime in and, I support the request for a new Department of Community Care. And for people who are worried of threats of an unknown nature, that's a very white worry. It's a very white worry. I'm on the street too. I'm on the street unarmed, working with people who sometimes pose a threat to me physically. And I'm a parent, okay? But what am I gonna do? Call a guy with a gun for what? They're not gonna help. And they're traumatizing. So like, I hear you. If you're so scared, don't go out there. If you need to call the police, because 9 out of 10 times when you hear a noise and you call the cops, they are around the corner to harass houseless people, either on their way there or on the way back. And in terms of serious crime taking place here, that's all that people can say, that sort of propaganda. Serious crime happens in Northampton. Where is it? Where's the transparency? Why don't we know? That's not real. Those are people coming here to sort of scare us, so that seems kind of wild to me that they're even allowed to say that. I just want to, I've been here for many of the meetings. I think that you've all done really good work, and to counter the claims that it's not qualified, or even the city council or the mayor, not being qualified. Like, everyone sort of put this process into place. I think this is really representative of some conservative voices and some left voices in Northampton, even though I'm a radical left, obviously. But, and you're all very qualified. So, and, the city did not cater to our demands, and it was not easy. The city slowly gave in some insignificant cuts, and they tried to give even less. So I don't know where the city caving in, making monstrous cuts is coming from, because they've been very moderate, which is, getting us here. But, thank you for your time. I appreciate all the hard work you've done, and good health to you.
Thank you, Jose. The next speaker is named Abolish NPD.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Very well.
I want to first just say thank you to everyone on this commission and everyone who has worked to get this together, and everyone who has been working for the past year in fighting for justice. I am a resident of Ward 4 and I own a business in Ward 4. I want to say that I support everything that Jose just said and a number of people prior to him, and I just have a statement that I would like to read. As the saying goes, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Since the institution of policing began as a force to protect the property of white landowners, and we cannot dismiss that property at that time included melanated human beings, the power that has been given over to that institution has grown into an absolute power with military armament and qualified immunity, making the killing of people easier with less aforethought and the repercussions of taking a human life inconsequential. That is absolute power. We are at a moment where more people are realizing that this is not an institution that we can stand if we, citizens who are supposed to be the voice of the government, stand a chance of being able to live freely. Alongside the growth of the police force in this country has been the devaluing of humanity for those in need, undercutting assistance in healthcare, physical and mental, and continually removing financial support for people who need it has become standard practice. We need to reinvest in our community to strengthen it from the ground up. This can only be accomplished by removing the lethal harm that is oppressing everyone except those at the very top. It is for these reasons, as well as many more, that I support the defunding, dismantling, and abolishment of all police as the institution stands currently, and building up a real support for community needs. This does not mean ignoring the community's needs, but establishing a non-lethal means to help all of the individuals that live in our community. It is not ignoring the crimes that are committed, but finding a new community-focused care process to address them. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is LC. LC.
Hi all, my name's Lemmy and I just wanted to can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thanks everyone for being here. I just want to address some of the things, we've talked a lot, but I just want to start with the idea that policing stops crime. It's very clear that it doesn't. The research and the point that more research needs to be done feels really frustrating because there's so much research that says policing is really not evidence-based at all and doesn't actually stop the things it says it's going to do. And all we're really for the short term are asking for the unresearched incredible increase to the police budgets to be undone. There's been no research that says why we're militarizing police, why we're buying them tanks and guns. There's no research to that. And in Northampton, the budget has gone up by $1 million over the last 3 years, plus. So there's a lot of room for cuts because all those increases were not based in evidence. And so the evidence I do want to sort of get to is this is a document signed by 45 state domestic violence and sexual assault coalitions around the country. So a study indicated that the vast majority, 89% of survivors and service providers in domestic violence indicated that police contact results in contact with the family regulation system or child welfare or DCF. 61% stated that it can cause survivors to face criminal charges that could lead to deportation, and 70% reported that contact with police sometimes or often results in the loss of housing, employment, or welfare benefits. So all these issues that we're talking about, unhoused folks, all of those things, criminalization increases the amount of houselessness, increases the amount of families being torn apart, and when kids are in the child welfare system, that's when they are led to like poor outcomes later in life. If you talk to DMH, they know that. So criminalization is really not evidence-based at all, and really is protecting white folks and property. On the other hand, community care is really evidence-based. This is from an article from the Brennan Center of Justice. It's in Appendix G of the demands document that we have, if you guys want to check it out. Providing more resources and treatment programs for those suffering from substance abuse has been linked to lower crimes. Community organizations have an important role in lowering crime. Research shows that in a city of 100,000, each new one nonprofit community organization led to a 1.2% drop in the homicide rate, a 1% reduction in the violent crime rate, and a 0.7% reduction in the property crime rate. That's just any nonprofit organization funded. And also in Richmond, California, it was in 2007, it was one of the highest homicide rates in the country. They established an Office of Community Safety, and over the course of 10 years, the homicide rate dropped by 80%. So those are just some stats. So the budget stuff, that like the research is there that criminalization doesn't work. And if you fund other things, that it's better for our communities. And so these physicians and social workers and all these things that say like, we really need police. I'm a social worker myself, and I understand the unhealthy dependence that our systems have on police. And, you know, Jess Tilley presented it to you guys earlier this week and talked about how that tie actually keeps people from accessing services, right? So like when physicians are calling police on their clients, their patients, that means that patients are less likely to go to the emergency room or access medical care, which is an extremely problematic thing. So maybe we need other rapid response, and we need that very soon. And yeah, and so I just really want to name that. And so I want to end my my whatever this is about a personal story. So right before I got into social work school, I was an AmeriCorps member, and I worked at a residential facility in Springfield as an AmeriCorps member. And one of our youth, and I think youth has been honestly sort of underlooked population on this commission, which makes sense. You guys are volunteer, there's like not enough time to really look at it, but youth in our community are often the most targeted by police. I work with youth who have been targeted by Northampton police, who are in the mental health system, in residential programs in Northampton. But this residential program in Springfield, and I bring this up, you know, why is Springfield related to Northampton? We're so different. First of all, I don't think we are. Sorry, I'm talking fast for the interpreters. I talk fast when I'm nervous. But all I want to say is that, so a kid ran away from the program, and I went to look for him, and I found him. And when I found him, the program sent the police, and we were just at a library, and the police walked in, and I tried to be really like, you know, calm, like I was like 22, you know, budding social worker about to go to grad school, and I was supposed to have an internship at this residential facility once I started school. And you know, they found the kid, and I said, oh, he's having a hard time, he ran away from the program, and he was a queer youth of color, and felt really isolated at the program because of that at times. So I was trying to be really understanding. And next thing we know, we're outside, he's in handcuffs, and he's saying, am I arrested? Am I arrested? And honestly, I didn't even know if he was arrested. So I asked the officers, like, yeah, can you just like provide some clarification? Is he arrested? Is he not? They were searching him. He's like, this is unlawful if I'm not arrested. He had just run away from his program, right? So unclear if that was like illegal. And basically I was just trying to like support him in that police interaction, and like support him in not getting criminalized. And sorry, I'm running out of time, but like basically me just asking those questions, the police then called the program and told them they almost arrested me for like intervening in the arrest. And that's all to say, these physicians and social workers who are defending police, If you challenge them in any way, they will turn against you and no longer protect you or their client or your client. And so that's just, sorry, I'm supposed to direct to you, but it was really disheartening to have me as someone who was just trying to genuinely provide clarification seen as a threat. And social workers are constantly disincentivized to do their job when police officers are in the room because of the threat and the threat against me. And I eventually lost that internship and was no longer able to do a paid internship and had to do an unpaid internship, which is like not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. But like just one question to the police officer like elicited that. Like now imagine when the stakes are higher. I mean, the stakes were pretty high with that kid. He almost got charges, whatever. But that's all to say, like, criminalization doesn't work. It's not evidence-based. We need community care, and that's really clear. And so thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Elsie. I'm sorry we ran out of time. And just want to remind everyone, we so appreciate your comments and courage in giving them. At the same time, our fantastic interpreters are struggling to keep up. So we know this might be a nervous time when you're talking, but if you can just remember them and the job that they're trying to do, that would help us out and help them out a lot as well. Thank you. Our next speaker is Marcia. Marcia.
Hello, and thank you for the time. I first wanted to say, I think this is really good work that's going on, and it's a credit to Northampton that this process is so open, that people's thoughts and feelings and stories are being considered as a part of the decision-making, having to do with a sticky issue in our country. One, because it's the sort of at the crossroad of race, and also in terms of financial, all the different financial ramifications if you have money, if you don't have money. So it's also, and then also it's gender issues as well. So this is where it all kind of comes to a head in our society, the fairness and unfairness. So I want to recognize that just trying to tackle this is not going to be easy. And I give a great, I really think it speaks well of Northampton that you all are trying to dig into this work. One of the key issues, I used to be a youth director of a program in a city in Boston, as a matter of fact. And so I came into contact with police a lot because I was running an African-American and Latino boys program. And it was also interesting and not lost on anybody that the person that was running that was a woman, because we couldn't find a Latino or African-American man to run the program. But I think one of the things that we've got to look at here is the race question as to when people actually meet with the police in those key moments that they come across the police, when there's an issue, you've been pulled over, or you are, you're having difficulty with somebody and the police shows up, that those issues come up immediately. How decisions get made are made a lot on how people view race and gender and politics. So all those things in that moment, if police are not properly trained in how to deal with those things, I'm not surprised at all of the clumsiness that goes on. So I just want to say that, and I think we're going to have to move police in a different direction. I was a consultant on the Boston community policing program, and one of the things that was clear was that community policing means that police operate in a different way. They get to know the community members, they say hello to them, they know them. So there's less likelihood that they're going to pull a gun on somebody they know. So that's one thing that people need to think about, is how much interaction does the police have with the community that's not about always calling them when there's a problem. If the only time you see somebody when there's a problem, then there's no basis of a relationship there. And I think that has a lot to do with it. I thought Boston made a lot of gains through that community policing process. So I would suggest that you all look at some of the really good community policing processes that have gone on through the years, and look at some of the ones that have worked. What comes to mind is New Jersey has some good programs that have been done with community policing. And I think it's worth looking at those. The other thing that I really wanted to touch on here is a lot of the issues that the police are being called out for are mental health issues, in part because our society does not give enough mental health. Um, uh, there's not enough mental health services available. So I would really encourage that some of the money that gets moved from actual policing get put into mental health services being available to people, not just, you know, defunding the program and that money goes into something else. The money should be like almost like what they did with cigarettes, the state did with cigarettes. The money from the taxes from cigarettes was then taken to produce cigarette programs. The money that's taken from the policing programs would be well served to invest in mental health programs that begin to attach people, especially after all this isolation from COVID, that attach people to their communities, that help people to feel like they're a part of a community, and the police are just another part of that community. And I think one of the things that might also be looked at, I was watching a PBS program that was a demonstration of how mental health and policing were being streamlined together. They still had the independence of the mental health person who also could act as a witness to what the police are doing. But that person is there if what the situation calls is for a mental health person and not a police person. So the police need to learn how to drop back. Now, if you're a carpenter and you have a hammer, then every situation is a nail. So we need to help them to learn how to drop back and let people move forward that can de-escalate situations. And the primary focus of their training should be pulling your gun should always be the last resort. And pulling your gun means that you're not managing the situation that well. So that's something I would really ask people to think about in training police. The idea of attaching social workers to police so that when they go to situations that do not require, like it's not a robbery, it's not a situation where people are shooting, that a social worker accompany them, and then the situation gets evaluated and maybe the social worker takes the lead. There have been several incidents around the country where it was clear that the police were the wrong people to be called in the first place. Sometimes it should be the fire department for some of the issues that come up that people end up dead around. It's ridiculous. So, and then the other thing that I wanted to say was some of the money should also be shifted into basic needs. Housing is a critical need in this country. Affordable housing for people would probably, along with mental health, could probably mitigate much of these problems. So that's something that I think should be thought about. So mental health and basic housing, and that the police really should
Marcia, could you finish your thought? Your time is up.
So that the police should only be going out for violent crimes like rape, murders, and bank robberies. And that was the final thing that I was going to say. So thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Our next speaker, again, a reminder of speaking a little slower, is Kamala. Kamala, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, this is Kamala. Can you hear me?
Kamala, I'm sorry, I mispronounced kind of faintly, but if you can speak up a little bit.
Yeah, thank you so much. How's my volume now?
Very good, thank you.
Thank you. My name's Kamala. I'm trans. I identify by they or them, please. I just want to be a big shout out to your committee for the valuable work you're doing. I know you had some startup problems with, with people resigning and the reported open meeting law violations, but that's besides the point. What you're doing is so valuable for the community. And I just want to give a big shout out to the Northampton Police Department for saving my life. I was in crisis a couple of years back, and they didn't ridicule me or make fun of me because I'm, I was obviously trans, and they were just wonderful in every way. And I'm doing much better now. And I want to thank the Northampton Police Department for saving my life. And, and I did show up to some of those demonstrations with those Trump people in downtown Northampton. And I thought maybe these people were evil. And they were so nice to me. They didn't judge me at all. And the police, there were so many police, and they were so nice, just so nice to everybody, and so respectful. And, I'm just not a big fan of the $2 billion in economic damage that was caused by Antifa across the nation. And thanks to the Northampton Police Department, we haven't seen that here. And I live in a neighboring community, and I used to come into town all the time, but now I'm boycotting downtown Northampton because I don't feel safe anymore, because you're missing 9 police officers and you're defunding them without giving any thought or concern. And Antifa is basically run by ex-white skinheads, and BLM is openly led and funded by the Communist Party. And I don't know how anybody in this town can support that. You're trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. There's no problem with the police being racist and targeting people of color and Northampton, or trans, or the vibrant queer community that we have in town. And it's just, they're so good during the gay pride parade in May. And I by the way, I hope you're going to have that again, because I'm a big fan. And I just want to thank the commission for your work and for allowing me to speak. But again, I love the Northampton Police Department, and we even bought them. We had some guy who was collecting money to send pizza to them, because when I was at the standout on October 31st in front of the courthouse, and I see we have some of them are here right now waving Blue Lives Matter flags and being polite and just waving. A lot of cars are beeping their horns as they pass. It's nice to see. So I think I'll just end my comments with that and thank the commission for your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is iPhone. iPhone. Can you unmute on your end?
I can't.
You're good.
Am I on?
You're good. Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make a couple of points. First of all, I don't know how much the commission has been in contact with the chief or with the police department in general, because there were a couple of issues and inaccuracies in the preliminary report that you wrote. But I wanted to talk a little bit about something that I've discussed with a few people that I know, and it's about, rather than forming an entirely new department of community health, which is a whole nother level of bureaucracy and higher taxes for those of us who pay, I'm wondering about something that the chief has suggested, which is having embedded social workers, some on each. It would involve funding, but some social workers on each shift who would go as a ride along, because every call has the potential for violence and or having to bring somebody to the hospital, which a social worker probably wouldn't be able to do. That would be left to a police officer to do that. So that's one of the points that I wanted to make. And the other one is about any more cuts. And I feel that if there are any more cuts that have to be made, that would necessitate layoffs. And the layoffs would be people who were, most layoffs are last hired, first fired. And that would be people of color, women. The diversity would definitely be reduced if there were any more cuts to the police department. And I think efficiency would be cut. So those were the 2 points that I wanted to make. And thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Summer. Summer, you can
Hi.
unmute.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you very well. Thank you.
I'm a past resident. I'm still local in the community. I'm a taxpayer. I don't want to get more specific for safety reasons, as I've had unsafe interactions with the PD. I'd like to voice my support for defunding the police department. I've been a part of many of these meetings, as many of you have. I agree and support the people before me who've made the same statement, not just in this meeting, but over the past year. I want to say that I'm hearing in the calls from the police supporters things like we need to remove houseless people from downtown and the mentally ill from downtown. It's very obvious, as many people have said, that that should not be the role of the police department. And the way that we help those members of our community is not through more money to the police department, but the opposite. Currently, you can go online to Pioneer Valley Housing now and see community mutual aid happening in real time. They've successfully secured housing for many members of the community throughout the pandemic and through this year through mutual aid. This is a way that we help our community, stripping the bloated police budget and actually giving it to organizations who have the means and the desire to help people, not just lock them away. I have significant mental illness. I live with a partner with mental illness who's also a first responder. All people are good and deserve housing and safety and not harassment. I also hear concerns from the pro-police supporters that they don't want to defund the PD basically because it's the system we have in place already. And they're worried about not having that system of enforcement available at their immediate call. But again, that's not a reason to keep a clearly broken and dysfunctional system that doesn't actually protect our community members. We gain safety from each other and rely on ourselves and our community members to come to our aid when called. And if we construct new community-based safety response models, I mean, it's just obvious to anyone who's been paying attention to history. The NoHo Police Department has rooms full of unnecessary military-style gear worth thousands that could be easily and quickly liquidated into the community without compromising the police department's ability to act as a first responder unit. I know many veterans who can really explain or give an idea of how much that equipment is actually worth and how much it costs, and also that it doesn't have any need to be in the Northampton community. And I think when we look at budgeting for the police, we can cut a lot of things that aren't personnel that would benefit the community. And that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Summer. The next person before we take a break would be Ann Padulek. Ann, you can unmute.
Unmute. Okay.
Very good. You're good.
Okay. Well, thank you for calling on me. My husband and I live on Nonotuck Street in Florence, and 3 generations of my family have made Northampton their home. Born here, families were raised here. My grandparents came here when they were in their teens. So there's some history. And I support the Northampton Police Department. I've asked everyone that I've met that's newer to the area why they wanted to live in Northampton. And it's a common theme. It's safe. Northampton is safe. And I give a shout out to the police department. We want to defund them, but we want to keep enough of them so that if we call them, they're willing to give up their lives for ours. It just is shocking to me that this is even happening. I don't oppose the commission and looking at any government group and seeing how the money is spent. I do object to the fact that we're saying that they're spending too much on safety gear, that it's ridiculous. And with all those generations, we've called the police department a month ago. I called the Northampton Police Department. There were two men coming out of the woods in my yard. They were dressed like, they were working men, and they had no car. They walked around my driveway. They came up on the porch. I was home alone, working from home, and pounded on the door. I didn't answer. They walked away, stayed on the sidewalk for about 5 minutes, came back to the door, and then walked away, not on the driveway, but into the woods. I called the police department. The dispatcher was calm. She said they're on their way. The disposition of this came out to be peaceful. It was a neighbor who had hired them to cut trees, but they needed to be on my property. The officer came, he took care of it. They did a fantastic job. That's not the first interaction in 3 generations that my family has had with them. Now, are they perfect? They aren't. They're human beings. We're holding them to a standard that we don't hold ourselves to. I really think that we need to be so careful what we wish for and what we do. These people put their lives on the line. Do they do that every day in Northampton? Probably not, but they're willing to. They're always willing to. My son and daughter-in-law, my son had a love affair with Chicago. He's lived in Chicago for 10 years. They played volleyball on the beach, touched football, went to museums, walked and ate outdoors. They can no longer go outdoors. There's bullets flying everywhere. We're ridiculous to think that that can't trickle down. I want to refund the police. I think mental health is a huge issue, and we need to find the money to have a separate venue for that. But I think that it sounds to me like a little bit of a witch hunt. Someone thought this was a good idea and everybody jumps on this bandwagon. We need them. I need them. I don't want to live in the Northampton without them. We're safe by and large because of them. And I can't believe that they're taking this kind of harassment. And that's what I see it as. I think it's, intelligent speaking people, probably really good people, but I think it's wrong. I really think they need to be commended for us all wanting to live here. They play a huge role in that. And I think that we should refund the police. So that's my statement.
Thank you, Anne. Well, as is customary, it's 12:55. We'll take a 5-minute stretch break and resume at 1 o'clock. And just to remind you, if you want to leave the meeting completely, that's certainly your choice. But if you want to stay, just don't leave, and you can put your mute off and your video off. So we will return at 1 o'clock. Thank you.
right, so we're rounding on 1 o'clock and returning. So I want to thank everyone for continuing to stay. We're going on the second hour of this now, into the third. I'm just going to go through the meeting parameters again, just so that everyone is aware of it, especially if folks are just joining us now or joined us within the past hour. So every hour, we are going to take a 5-minute break announced by the facilitator, and we'll repeat these parameters at the beginning of each session, as we know people are going to be coming and going. We acknowledge your time to speak to the commission by seeing the raised hand feature in the reactions tab on Zoom. If you want to speak, you want to use that feature by clicking on reactions and then raise hand. Depending on the version of Zoom that you're using, that might be under participants and raise hand. If you're calling in to raise your hand, you want to press *9. And then when you're called on, you want to press *6 to unmute. If you have any difficulty using the raise hand feature, you can message the host so that we can assist you. Each speaker is going to be given 7 minutes of time to speak or to ask questions. Please note that the response part of this is part of your 7 minutes. So if you have questions that you want an answer to, please ask them up front so that we can respond appropriately. And you'll be notified by the facilitator when your 7 minutes are up, and you'll be asked to finish your thought. There's no obligation to speak for the entire 7 minutes. And if you find yourself in agreement with things that previous speakers have said, you can just let us know that you agree with it without restating the entire comment. Please try to refrain from speaking fast. Our translators need a few extra seconds to do their work and ensure their accuracy. If you feel comfortable providing your name and location of your residence, that is much appreciated, but we understand if you want to protect your confidentiality. If you prefer to write your comment in an email to the commission, we'll put the commission's email address in the chat, but it's ncoffeemore@northamptonma.gov. If you do that, we will get them. Those emails will be sent to the entire commission, and I assure you that we read every submission. And then finally, we recognize that your experience and the work of this commission can elicit strong emotions. We respectfully ask that you consider the presence and dignity of every person attending today, as well as the commitment to this process that everyone here has expressed by being here and participating. While you're making your comments, please keep them directed to the commission and not at one another. Name calling, derogatory language, threatening, or calling out individuals will not be accepted in today's hearing. These behaviors will be interrupted if they occur. Anyone engaging in these behaviors will be given one warning before they're removed from the meeting. And with that, we'll begin. We already have folks with their hand raised, but again, if you'd like to be put into that queue, please use the raise hand feature. The first person up is Lily P.
Hi, I'm Liliana P. from Ward 6. I've spent many hours speaking and listening to this Policing Review Commission. I'm here again to say I'm neurodiverse and have mental illnesses and trauma, and this society does not create untraumatized neurodiverse people. I've had the police threaten to be called on me, a skinny 5-foot teenager, during a mental health/domestic crisis. I've had to live with a police presence that constantly threatens me, all in Northampton. What this all means is that it's Northampton's responsibility to start to end this cycle of trauma and violence before it consumes yet another generation. Through policing, there's a violence response to ADHD, autism, etc. And I mean not just physical violence. This violence is done by police, who the community has put all the responsibility on for dealing with neurodiversity. The current system of policing further ostracizes and terrorizes disabled people because it responds with little understanding and violence. It removes all responsibility, accountability to, and connection with disabled people from the community. By using peer-led alternatives, there's a greater understanding with a disabled, neurodiverse, and/or mentally ill person that are seeking help. By using community-focused models of public safety, such as the Department of Community Care, it puts accountability to neurodiverse people on the whole community and the city of Northampton. It also motivates connection with disabled people who have been ostracized and harmed by the community. Not only would deconstructing policing lessen the damage done to community members, but their alternatives would create a positive impact. We need to care for and support neurodiversity, invest in it. I support Northampton Abolition Now's demands to reallocate the $880,000 already cut from the police budget and establish a new Department of Community Care, defund the Northampton Police Department by 50% and reallocate those funds too. The city of Northampton needs to step up and provide for all of its citizens and community members, all of them, all the community members that have been harmed by policing, those who are unhoused, neurodiverse, disabled, mentally ill, victims of domestic violence, BIPOC, and more. Many of our commissioners are these people that hold up our communities and have spent much time and effort into knowing, researching, speaking out, understanding, and listening. And I thank all of you for that.
All right, thank you very much. So the next person is Mark. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hello. Hi. So my name is Mark. Some people may know I'm very politically engaged, very involved in political stuff, and really care about what our city is doing about issues such as this. Criminal justice reform is really important to me. I want to thank the commissioners for all the work. It's very much appreciated, and taking the time out of their day to take this on. So I wanted to mention from my own personal experience, I was what's described as a peacekeeper that helps with de-escalation, helping provide unarmed safety services at protests. So I helped as a peacekeeper at the protest that was for Black Lives Matter in Northampton that had an estimated 4,500 attendees. With only a couple dozen fellow peacekeepers, unarmed peacekeepers, we were able, and no police interventions, we were able to prevent any violence. There was 0 reported violence within the 5-hour period without requiring police intervention. Thanks to everyone who made sure to make that possible. I would say that it wasn't easy when the local police brought in so much militarized tactical police from the state police force, which brought armored vehicles, canine units and tactical gear. I definitely feel that the over militarization made people feel threatened and didn't actually calm things down. I would say quite the opposite. I would say it definitely riled up the crowd, and I don't think it improved safety to bring in additional. I would have actually rather trust local police to take that on than state police. And then the addition of, out of our budget, of tons of police in reserve from local forces, I feel that was unnecessary. So I wanted to say that, let's see, that, we don't need police to respond to every issue happening in the city, and this itself shouldn't be seen as just a criticism of the police. I think it should just be, that is just common sense that we have multiple departments in the city that handle different crises. And I definitely don't think that it makes sense to whatever issues. And I believe the police chief did admit that a large percentage of the calls that they answer to are not, in fact, are not ones that needed to be addressed by them. Other people have mentioned about that the police makes them feel safe here, but the question is safety for who? And evidently, that depends on people's background and experience. We don't have a lot of crime in our city, but it also is because of the wealth of the city. Studies show crime is tied to poverty. So if we want to actually reduce crime, we need to focus on addressing affordable housing, access to healthcare, public education, transportation, and food access. I support the recommendations of the reallocation of funding to actually address some of these issues, as well as to create a mental health response that is unaffiliated with police and that don't carry guns to respond to mental health crises. I think that training alone isn't going to fix this problem. More is needed. And the real, so the real way to reduce crime, we really need to tackle the real issues behind it, and to not see policing as as a solution to everything. Previously, when we were having budget cuts across the city, one of the few departments that did not propose a single budget decrease in their budget, the schools department, all these other departments agreed to have many of the departments agreed to have partial cuts or to go at level funding. The one that asked for additional funding was the police department. In the middle of COVID, asking for some things like hybrid police vehicles and stuff that really weren't urgent at this particular time, and other such things, taking on additional stuff when other departments, including even the mayor's department, were having cuts. So I think it's something that we need to reevaluate, why it is that we spend so much more on police as a percentage of the size of our city compared to other cities, especially ones that have higher crime rates than we do. That why is it that we have such a large budget as it compared to the total? So I think that's something we really need to address. I thank the commissioners for all their work, and I do recommend that if we want everyone to feel safe in our city, we have to actually have a plan to make people feel safe by providing alternatives to policing, because policing is not the solution to all of our problems. And that needs to be something that is thought of. And we really need to look into addressing the root causes of poverty, root causes of crime, which really come down a lot to poverty and how that's addressed, and finding alternative ways for dealing with mental health crises. So I thank the commissioners for their time, and thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you. So the next person is Danielle A.
Hi there, this is Danielle Amedeo calling from Ward 3. Thank you, commissioners, for all of your work. I know you have spent so many hours reading and listening, and here you are today giving up your weekend to hear us all out. So really, I have a heartfelt thank you for your work. And I just want to say some words in support and defense of the commission, because I think it's really not okay for people to call the integrity of your work into question. So there's my word of support. And again, I've said it before, I really believe the work you're doing should be paid. I really support calls from folks that have come before me for a paid Department of Community Care and departments of accountability and oversight. And I'd love to see the work that you all are doing continue with formal budget support from the city, so that you can actually be compensated for your time. So that's one point. The other is that on a number of these calls, I've heard really vocal support for police departments coming from survivors of domestic violence and sexual violence. And I am here to remind everyone on the call, everyone, that we are not a monolith. I am a survivor of domestic violence. I am a survivor of sexual assault. And I believe that the Northampton Police Department, regardless of what people perceive their record and image to be, should be defunded. And that monies that are currently allocated to that department could be reallocated to social and human services. I know that many of our commissioners have been forced to disclose painful histories regarding their position on police based on what they have gone through. And I think that that is really unacceptable as well, that they have been forced to disclose information that I feel forced to disclose. But it's just a reminder that we are not a monolith. There are survivors who believe in the defund movement, who believe in investing in our communities, not in guns, not in police. And I'm one of those folks. So thought it was important to share that. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much, commissioners. I really applaud your work and thank you so much for it.
All right, thank you for that. The next person is Rye. Rye, I think there might be something wrong with your mic. We can't hear you. Yep. Can you try again?
Hello?
There we go.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for your patience. Hello. I want to start by thanking all of the members of the Police and Review Commission. I feel that Northampton is very lucky to have received and be receiving your service. You have been brave, diligent, and incredibly committed. You have gone over tons of internal documents from the NPD in the city. You have stayed up to date on the work of peer organizations in other cities, and you have confronted difficult topics. You have brought your own experiences and actively sought and included the experiences of a wide range of our community members. Northampton is incredibly lucky that its future will, at least in part, be guided by you all. I hope that City Council and the Mayor will accept your guidance and in particular, passionately pursue the creation of a new department which is directly accountable to the folks it serves. I have heard some folks in our community draw attention to ways in which the NPD is believed to be more aware of the harm of policing and its structures than peer departments. I have even heard folks describe ways in which the NPD strives to mitigate its own harm. The fact that the NPD is more aware than peer departments of the harm that policing, criminalization, and forced institutionalization cause for folks in crisis does nothing to negate the harm our community members have experienced. We know from the testimony of our community members that the experience folks have with the NPD is not an exception to the norm. The solution is not to reprimand the NPD or transform them into something they are not. The solution is to reflect as a community on our treatment of mental health, houselessness, and other crises in the city, and to improve. The Police and Review Commission has begun the process of reflection, and their recommendations in their final report can begin the process of improvement. I want to particularly appreciate and encourage the Commission's recommendation to create a new department, and want to particularly appreciate and encourage the Commission to ensure all new services are directly and meaningfully accountable to the people they serve. Thank you again, and yeah, that's all. Thanks.
All right, thank you. So the next person is Mimi Rodgers.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Mimi Rodgers. I am a resident of Ward 6. I have lived in the city of Northampton for over 20 years. I am a white person who has never had any actual negative experience with the police officers, but I attribute that to my privilege. In fact, I have been pulled over by the police, and because of my privilege, I've never been in fear of my life when the police pull me over. So I just want to put that out there because it's a very different disconnect of people who are from vulnerable communities and their experiences with the police, and the people who may have lived here for generations, but historically have not been a target for poor police practices or poor human practices in the guise of policing. I want to just say that defunding the police will not result in making the city of Northampton less safe, as long as the resources are shifted to provide things like the mental health experts to be the ones who intervene rather than uniformed armed police officers. I also just want to take the time to express my thanks to the commission for their hard work. It's a tremendous amount of work that you've all quote unquote volunteered for. And it's an incredible amount of time that this work takes. I want to really thank you. I have served in commission before, so I know it's like late nights, it's weekends, it's people calling you, emails, it's a lot, and people who don't agree with you, and that can be frightening as well. So I just know that I want to thank you, and as a citizen of Northampton, I'm standing up for you and for the work that you're doing, and I hope that you'll be able to make strong recommendations that will drastically change our current policing practices. I think that there's a lot of things we should be looking at. It's just, there's a long list, and I'm looking forward to supporting the work that you're doing, and I'm going to just leave it there. But thank you again for the work that you do.
All right, thank you very much. So the next person is Cornelius.
Hi, DM.
You're breaking up a little bit. Can you try again?
Hi, do you hear me?
Yeah, it's really, really breaking up.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess what I want to say is, I just wanted to fund like extraordinarily expensive and inefficient police organization, and instead fund a community-based approach that prevents crime from happening in the first place. Support Northampton Abolition Now plan for a Department of Community Care. And thank you. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. I think we got most of that. Again, for folks, if you need to, you can always reach out to the commission through email as well to make comments, and coffeemore at northamptonma.gov. I'll put that in the chat in a second. So if you can't make a comment today, or if you're having trouble, you can always reach out to us that way. The next person is Ray, Sarinen.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. Hi. So yeah, my name is Ray. I live downtown Northampton. I have for about 2 years. I think it's Ward 5. And well, first off, I just want to say thank you guys for all the hard work that you're doing, and for holding this space. I think I've heard a lot of really great things today, and I've really appreciated being able to come together in this context. I did not grow up around here, but I do really love living in Northampton. And I do agree with, what a lot of people have said, that it is a safe community. I feel safe, not because, the police department, for any reason because of the police department, but because, on any given day, walking downtown Northampton, you'll see a group feeding other people, or harm reduction posters on half of the businesses, or people handing out masks and hand sanitizers and snacks. And these resources are run by community members and nonprofit organizations, a lot of people volunteering their own time, their own money, their own resources. And I think if we do not institutionalize more community care, that we could be in danger of losing it in the future. I really believe that in defunding the Northampton PD and reallocating those resources into, just more institutional community care. I personally haven't had really any experiences with police in Northampton. I am a white woman. I do live kind of with and amongst a lot of unhoused individuals. I park my car right next to the encampment on the bike path, and I do see harassment from police officers. And it could be safety checks as well, but there's always a large police presence. And I think if we don't defund, we're really going to hurt our neighbors, our unhoused neighbors, because they are residents of Northampton as well. And that we really need to focus on a housing first, housing opportunities. I think PV Housing Now, which was mentioned earlier, has done a great job, as well as a lot of different local organizations. So yeah, that's my piece. And thank you guys.
All right, thank you very much. The next person is Robert.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Robert. I live in Northampton. I was also born and raised here, and my family has lived here for many generations. And I just wanted to mention that because there are so-called HAMP people who support defunding the police as well. I just wanted to start by thanking the commission for all of the work that they've put in so far and all of the work that remains. You've done an incredible job of opening up meetings with public comments at almost every meeting to allow the community to engage. You have been actively responding to calls and emails, meeting with community members. I know that it took a little while to get the outreach committee off the ground, but I really do think you have done your best to create a safe space for people to come and share their experiences. There are just a few things I wanted to say. The first is I'm hearing a lot of fear from people that by defunding the police, that their sense of safety will be lost. And I just want to put out there that I don't think anyone, even myself, who supports defunding the police, is advocating for removing our police department overnight. We're not just taking away police and letting it be a free-for-all, and figuring out as we go. And I have heard from commissioners during their meetings, that they are considering a lot of the concerns that people are bringing up tonight, such as response times, which I think, alternatives need to be funded at high enough levels where we can seriously talk about response times that are quick. Sorry, I lost my train of thought a little bit, but I think that, so there are just a couple other things. Chief Casper, she mentioned that she has tried to put pamphlets and literature out in the department offices about racism, about bias, and that the police have been uninterested in learning, that they haven't taken her up on that. And that's really concerning to me, especially as we talk about issues of training and sort of the culture of our police department. And I also wanted to put a plug in for considering traffic enforcement, alternatives to traffic enforcement, kind of moving up in your faces. I think that's something that can be done sooner rather than later. And I think that's about it. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. So the next person is Jill's iPhone.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to touch base. I would like to preempt before I go into why I wanted to speak. I just want to let everybody know I'm a rape survivor. I am a domestic violence survivor. I lost my father at 18 years old to a heroin overdose, which I watched my whole life. So by preempting with that, I just want people to know I am a white woman. I've worked very hard for every single thing I have in my life. I do not feel privileged. If I was privileged, I would have had things handed to me. That was not the case. My father was actually a police officer who was crooked. I get it. I absolutely get it. That does not mean that he was a bad person. He was still a father. He was still a husband. He just had an issue. Just like every single one of the people that I've heard prior to me talk about mental illness, abuse survivors, victims. Well, then stop being victims. Do something about it. Statistics prove I should be shooting heroin, selling my children, not having custody of my children. I'm a successful business owner. My husband is a successful business owner. I have 3 amazing children. It is all in what we want in life. You are wanting the police to not come to calls in an aggressive manner. I agree with that. I absolutely do. We don't need to nothing. I get it. But when criminals are criminals and they're breaking the law and there's a situation that could get really hostile and affect everybody around the situation, the cops are trying to control that situation. There are good cops, there are bad cops, there are good white people, bad white people, good black people, bad black people. It doesn't matter what race, creed, religion, it doesn't matter. There's good and bad in everything. The unfortunate part is that everybody that I've heard speak prior to this, they all nobody wants to take responsibility for their actions. Well, I'm a mental health, I'm a this. Yes, I get all that too. But you know something? I suffered as well. It's all in what you want. Change your life. The police are called to situations that they don't always want to respond to. I heard somebody say earlier, oh, well, we don't have to respond. The police chief said most of the calls they don't even need to respond to. Correct. They don't want to respond either. Unfortunately, it's the law, and they have to for legal purposes so that people don't say, well, I called and they never came and now my husband's dead or my wife's dead. That can get changed. Absolutely. I agree with that 100% because they don't want to go to a call if they don't have to. There's calls that they should be on that they can't because they're in really minuscule situations that could be handled by maybe a social worker or somebody else, but not the police. I worked on an ambulance for many years in a city. And I will tell you this, there were many of times that I could not have done my job. I could not have saved a life if there was not a police officer at the scene to help with a very volatile situation, a domestic abuse situation where the wife was laying on the ground bleeding from the head and I couldn't get to her because the husband was trying to barricade the door. Well, guess what? It took a specially trained person to come, another fellow police officer who was trained in that, very well versed in that, to talk the person down so that we could get in. There was no violent takedown. They talked him down, opened the door. The police put handcuffs on him. Of course they did, because he was violent and he was not safe to himself or anybody else. You know, people have to understand that, yes, there are horrible cops, but these cops are fathers, brothers, mothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, daughters, sons. They're humans too. And just like the one woman said, you're holding these people to a different standard than you want to be held to. And you know something? That's not okay. I believe mental illness is a real thing and it needs to be addressed. I 100% agree that we need to have some funds to make that happen. But I also need to say that I'm sick and tired of people enabling people. Oh, well, they had a bad home life. Oh, well, I'm sorry. They've been, battling substance abuse. Well, you know something? I'm living proof to tell you that, yep, I come from shit as well. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. I come from a very unlikable situation growing up. I watched a lot of things that no child should ever see. No child should ever have to adhere to that lifestyle. But I did. And I'm here to say that we all have choices in life and we all have power. And when I personally look back at my life, I really have to look back and say, wow, I could be in a very different situation than I am. But thanks to some police officers, thanks to some social workers, absolutely working in conjunction. I have had run-ins with the police. I have been arrested. I have been pulled over. I'm white, but I still got arrested. I'm really tired of hearing all of that. We are in a world that is so divided and everybody is so wanting to point fingers. We all have to work together at this. Not all cops are bad, just like not all mental health patients are bad or Black people or white, there's good and bad in every single thing in life. I don't care what the situation is. We all can make a difference in our own lives if we all start at home. Instead of pointing the finger all the time, oh, it was the cop. Nobody talks about anything to do with cops being ambushed and shot and this wonderful mother, 9-year-old daughter who got ambushed in her police cruiser. She's working the night shift. Nobody talks about that. It's all about the cops that are arresting let me say it, criminals. They're breaking the law. Somebody has to control that. And when somebody is on a substance abuse situation and they're out of their mind and they can't be controlled, sometimes they have to be taken down. They have to be restrained for the
So
safety of
that's
their
your
own self.
time. So can you finish your thought?
Yes, I just want to say, I believe some change needs to happen. Defunding the police is going to be the worst thing you could possibly do. That city will never be the same. And it is a wonderful, wonderful city. And it's never going to be the same. Thank you.
So the next person is Aaron S.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. What I wanted to bring to the attention of the committee is that I don't think this needs to be a conversation about defund the police to support social services. Honestly, I think our city council should be supporting social services and other community services, regardless of whether defund the police happens or not. And for those on this call and on this committee who are dedicated to providing those social services in the community, they should really focus on that as well, not as a result of defunding the police, but as an entity in and of itself. These are mutually exclusive society concerns. I support the police, I support funding the police, but I also very much support funding social services and other tools for our members of our society. Where is that question? Where was that effort prior to 2016? Where was that effort when the state hospital, for those of you who are long-term residents of Northampton, where was that effort when the state hospital was closed? That's when we should have funded the social services that our community needs. That should have been on the agenda for the city council every single meeting from that date forward. Defund the police is not the way to get more funding for social services. So I ask those on the call and those on the committee, if you're not committed to making every single city council meeting about funding social services, then what is truly your agenda here? I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. I just want to clarify, because you did ask a question. Do you want us to respond to that? Just going to ask you to unmute just to clarify. Did you want us to respond to what what we're doing?
No, I'm sorry. That was rhetorical.
All right, thank you. Just wanted to make sure. Okay, so the next person on the list is Defund Police. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, so my name is Haven. I live in the area. I am 16. I'm Black. My father does not live with me, but he is an immigrant. I have a single mom. I live in low-income housing. Yeah, I'm a young person. I have experienced abuse in my life. I've gone through a lot of things that do not put people in a position that you are supposed to be able to get ahead. I dropped out of high school, but yeah, I am really passionate about defunding the police because I see how the police affect people in my community, and I see that it does not protect the people who are like me. It does not allow them to move forward in their lives the way they want to. Yeah, this is a really emotional issue for me. But when people who are white are saying that they won't feel safe without police, I'm confused because it makes me feel like they don't care about people like me who are not supposed to thrive or get ahead in the world in any way. Yeah. I feel like our communities are supposed to keep us safe. And I don't feel like anyone is saying that the police don't do jobs that are important, because the jobs that they are doing are important. But what I want to make clear is that they are not the best people for those jobs. There are people who could receive better training, who are not people who are domestic abusers, who are not people who have guns, who are not people who have this superiority where they're putting themselves in the position to have power over civilians. There could be people who are in our community and who are civilians like us, protecting each other. I think that is a lot more powerful, and I personally would feel a lot safer in Northampton if everyone was protecting each other and it was people who I knew and who I trusted to keep us safe. And I think that a lot of other people who are in marginalized positions would also feel safer if it was our communities working together to keep us safe and not police who put themselves in positions that hold them above us. Because no person should be above another person, no matter their identity. Yeah, I think that's what I want to say for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So the next person is YP.
Hi, it's me. Can you hear me? Okay, yes. Hi, thank you all so much, commissioners, for all the time and research and work you've put in. You're doing such an amazing service for all of us, and I think so many of us are so grateful for that. I wanted to read some historical quotes to put a lot of things that I think white people in the community think in context. And yeah, I'll just start. So this is a MLK quote from 1967. Whites, it must frankly be said, are not putting in a similar mass effort to re-educate themselves out of their racial ignorance. It is an aspect of their sense of superiority that the white people of America believe they have so little to learn. Each step forward accents an ever-present tendency to backlash. In a 2016 introduction to an edition of the Kerner Report that was released in 1968, it says, no institution received more scrutiny than the police. That's been true of every one of these reports since 1917. So this is just to emphasize how long this has been going on, over 100 years. People have been calling to defund the police and reduce their size, scope, and power and invest in things that really make people safe. And that's what we're calling for today. It's not a new thing, and it's not actually very radical if you look at the historical context. I'm going to read some quotes from a podcast called Citations Needed that I highly recommend. It takes quotes from the New York Times op-eds and other journals from the 60s and the 1860s, just to also put in context a lot of the things that we've been hearing from people, because to me, these are the parallels to people saying now to not defund the police and reallocate those resources elsewhere. So this is from a well-known Washington columnist who was close with President Johnson. So he was sort of a liberal centrist. His name was Drew Pearson. This is from 1964 in the Alabama Journal. I'm substituting the word Negro out for Black people as I read this. So his article was called Black Extremists Aid Wallace, Wallace being the segregationist governor of Alabama. So he wrote, so this is his response to the civil rights movement. This is the tragic story of how Black extremists after the Civil War blew their tremendous reservoir of goodwill in the North by excesses in the South. In less than a decade, the high-handed methods of Black politicians and white carpetbaggers turned sour the deep sympathy felt for Black people during and immediately after the Civil War. It killed the spirit of racial cooperation and set back Black progress by half a century. So he's blaming the protests on setting back Black progress. During recent weeks, I have visited some of the major northern cities, New York, Chicago, Cleveland, and Baltimore, and I can report that anti-Black sentiment has increased and hardened almost overnight. In Cleveland, it was changed by the Black youth who went berserk and smashed store windows after the bulldozer killing of a white preacher. It was further hardened by the dumping of garbage, trash, and human excrement from Black windows on Cleveland police as they tried to stop the rioting. Cleveland was a city of great racial understanding. It isn't anymore. The Black man has waited a long time. He has every right to be impatient. He is entitled to more understanding from his northern neighbors. Nevertheless, human nature being human nature and 90% of this nation being white, the unfortunate inescapable fact is that the great reservoir of northern goodwill for the Black man is evaporating. Already, this is hurting passage of a strong civil rights bill. So again, he's blaming the protests on not passing the civil rights bill. From a 1961 Gallup poll, it says Americans were asked whether such tactics such as sit-ins and demonstrations by the civil rights movement had helped or hurt the chances of racial integration in the South. More than half, 57%, said such demonstrations and acts of civil disobedience had hurt chances of integration. In another 1964 Gallup poll, so less than a year after Dr. King's march, Americans were even more convinced that mass demonstrations harmed the cause, with 74% saying they felt these actions were detrimental to achieving racial equality and just 16% saying they were helping it. And again, this is to put context for white people today saying defund the police is going too far. This is not new. It's been white people have been responding this way to protests against policing for over 100 years. And then if you look 100 years before to the 60s, we land in 1860 and the news of the day in 1860, abolition, of course. And how did The Economist and the New York Times write about abolition? They were not particularly in favor of it. And there is a long passage about he was a philanthropist, who was writing about how to address the peculiar institution of chattel slavery. So this is in the New York Times in 1859. Mr. Elihu Burritt, who used to be widely known as the learned blacksmith, is a gentleman of excellent intentions. Like most men in free states, he is opposed to slavery, regrets its existence, and ardently desires to abolish it. But unlike other abolitionists, he seeks to accomplish this end by persuasion rather than by force. He hopes to bring it about with the friendly concurrence of the slaveholders at the South. Then he does not denounce, however, much he may dislike their practices. He does not ignore their personal interest in what they have learned to regard as so large a portion of their property. Slaveholding, in his view, an immense evil, yet he has no such epithets as thief and robber to cast in the faces of the masters. On the contrary, he seeks their cooperation in the stupendous undertaking he has in view, nor does he ask their aid for nothing. He requires that slaves be set free gradually, but surely, and proposes to share the loss with those men who own them. So it's a long article by a man, this is printed in the New York Times, advocating for a slower, gradual end to slavery. And I just hope that people in Northampton are looking at this from a historical point of view, and especially white people who feel uncomfortable saying, let's defund police and put money into alternatives that keep everyone safe, which again, is someone who's a huge proponent of this. No one is saying do it overnight. We're not saying to put anyone in jeopardy. We know every solution we're advocating for would keep everyone safe. But yeah, I think this historical perspective is really important, especially for other city leaders to keep in mind as well. And to be able to look back on what we're doing now and think about what you would want to read in the paper about where you stood now. That's not really saying, I'm not saying this to the commissioners because I think you all understand this. This is for the wider public.
That's your time. Thank you. So at this point, we have 2 people left in the list to speak. So in lieu of taking a break, or before we decide to take a break, I'm just going to ask, does anyone else in this meeting wish to speak? And if you do, could you raise your hand just to get you in the queue so that we know? Otherwise, we'll take the next folks. Okay, so we got a couple more coming up. Okay, so with that, we'll take a break. We'll do one more person and then take a break on this. So the next person is Elisa. There we go.
Hi, everyone.
Oh, perfect. There we go. Now we can hear you.
Okay. My name's Elisa Klein. I live in Leeds, and I'm a former Northampton City Councilor. And first, I'd like to offer my gratitude again to the commissioners. I know you've been working really hard for many months and doing deep research, and it's just so deeply appreciated. I also want to say that I have an enormous amount of gratitude for the brave people who are here telling their stories today of having had difficult and abusive encounters with the police. I think in the simplest sense, it's terrifying to be in any kind of encounter with the police. If you think about how you feel when you've been pulled over, as an example, in your car, the fear and the sense of intimidation that you feel when a person in this quasi-military gear who's equipped with a gun and other weapons approaches you, think about how that must feel if you're a person of color or a person who's houseless or a person who is in a beat up car who presents as poor or powerless, a person who's marginalized in this society in whatever way, someone who doesn't look neat and clean or conventional in a typical way. And you know, I know it's a little bit ridiculous that I'm using a traffic stop as something relatable, but I think it's something relatable to so many people. But so many folks have been exposed to harm by police in much higher stakes situations. And the bottom line here is that it's just truly terrifying to have police involved in any encounter because of their attitudes of power and control and the potential for them to use the harm and control that has been vested in them because of the role that they've been given in our society. I think historically, as slave catchers and brutal enforcers, and still currently. So gratitude and kudos to all of the people who are telling their stories. I understand that it can feel really scary and risky. I've been targeted by the Northampton police myself and by its union with attempts at intimidation. And I'm a white woman speaking about this. I was simply speaking up publicly in support of the movement for Black lives when I was targeted. And saying this, I absolutely recognize that if I had been a person of color or hadn't been serving in public office at the time, that the retribution could have been much worse with things like physical harm and the potential for trumped up charges and incarceration. I absolutely recognize that. Instead, the police union and individual members of the NPD publicly said and wrote extremely foul and nasty things about me and attempted to besmirch my reputation. They called for my removal from public office. And probably the worst piece of it was when they sent photos of female genitalia with the caption, "The latest picture of Elisa Klein," to local media outlets. I felt scared, I did feel intimidated, and I wasn't sure when the harassment would stop. And I just want to state one last time, I do understand that as a white woman, I experienced only a small bit of what many BIPOC and others experience every day because of police in our community. I am pleased with a lot that this commission has done. And again, I'm grateful to you for all of the time and the care and the research that you've put into your work. I'm a little bit distressed, however, that the central focus of so much of this work that we've heard about, at least, has become looking for mental health alternatives to some aspects of what police do. And not at all that this isn't important. These changes do need to be made. They absolutely do. So thank you for identifying those alternatives and making recommendations that need to be implemented. But what I'm concerned may be getting lost in this practical approach is the fact that the institution of policing is very much rooted in white supremacist culture that's about power and control, macho and patriarchal power and control, and just power and control that is harmful to everyone, but especially BIPOC, poor people, and others who've been pushed to the margins of our community. I know that the constant refrain is, but there are situations of violence in which we need police and guns and other weapons of power and control. But I ask, why in this society do we always think we need weapons at the ready, and that responding with power and control is the right response that can bring us safety? To close, I'll share a personal experience to illustrate this point further. I'm the survivor of an abusive family. I was sexually abused in my home for several years. I knew as a youth that I would never report this abuse to the police, nor did I want anyone else to report it. So many of us who've been harmed by interpersonal violence, whether it be sexual or domestic violence or bullying, feel similarly. I went on as an adult to work professionally for over 2 decades in the field of interpersonal violence prevention and response. And over those years, I worked with thousands of individuals and families, victims and survivors, and the people in their lives, and also with the people who perpetrate harm and their families and their communities. And very often, these are one and the same, particularly in situations of interpersonal harm in which over 90% of interpersonal violence is happening amongst family members, intimate partners, and members of a close-knit community. Few victims, families, and the people around them desire police intervention, especially in communities that have been targeted by police. To be clear here, though, there's no doubt that people want the abuse to stop. There is no doubt that they want the people who perpetrate the harm to get the help they need, not to be abusive. And there is no doubt they want solutions and foundational approaches to keeping the abuse from being perpetrated in the first place. That's what I wanted when I was young and still want. Policing is not even close to the primary prevention approaches that we need, and policing is not the response we need either. All this to say, the policing portfolio of responsibility is deeply misguided. The concept of armed quasi-military people intervening in most of the situations to which they're called is deeply misguided. I asked the commission to make bold recommendations that significantly defund the NPD and reallocate the funds to community care in new, thoughtful, and bold ways. And beyond that, I asked the city council and the mayor's office to follow through on divesting from policing and on implementing compassionate approaches to caring for all members of this community.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you. That is your time there. Thank you for. Again, we do have a break built in, but there are only two more folks who have their hand raised. So at this point, just to judge what we're going to need for time, I'm going to ask that if you want to speak, you please raise your hand. Give everyone a second here to do so. If you're new to Zoom, you want to click the reactions and then the raise hand button, or for some folks, it might be on the participants panel. Okay, so I see a number of hands that came up. So at this point, I think it's going to be best if we take another 5-minute recess. During that time, folks can grab water, run to the restroom, do whatever they need to do to care for themselves. And we'll be back at this point at 12:02. Or sorry, 2:02. I can't go back in time. Sorry about that. And again, if you're in this meeting, please don't leave the meeting. If your hand is raised, that will remove you from the queue. So you want to stay in the meeting, and we'll resume soon. To folks who just joined, again, we're on a 5-minute recess. We'll be resuming at 12:02.
Welcome back, everyone. I'll try to read the meeting parameters in a summative fashion because I think most of the folks have been here, but just in case. So what we have just done is take a 5-minute break. We have, looks like 5 individuals that would still like to speak. We want to let you know that you get in the queue to speak by raising your hand, which all of you have done, and you do that through the reactions tool in Zoom. But if you're calling on a phone, press 9 to raise your hand. Each speaker will be given 7 minutes to speak or ask questions to the commission. And please note that your response, our response, is part of your 7 minutes. So if you have questions, please ask them up front. You don't need to ask us questions, but you will be notified by the facilitator when 7 minutes are up so that you can finish your thought. There's no obligation to speak the full 7 minutes. Please, to honor the hard work of our translators, to try to refrain from speaking fast. Our translators need those few extra seconds to do their work. If you feel comfortable providing your name and your address, we would appreciate that, but we understand if you want to protect your confidentiality. If you prefer to write your comment and email it to the commission, you will see that email address in the chat. I assure you that we read every submission. And then finally, we want to make sure that the presence and dignity of every person today is respected. And so while you are making your comments, please keep them directed to the commission and not to each other. Name calling, derogatory language, threatening, or calling out individuals will not be accepted in the remainder of our hearing. And these behaviors will be interrupted if they occur. Anyone engaging in these behaviors will be given 1 warning before being removed from the meeting. So I'm going to take the hands raised in order, and the next speaker would be Tracy's iPad. Tracy, I'll unmute you, and then you can unmute yourself.
Hi, and thanks for the opportunity. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you very well, thank you.
I'd like to say that I agree with Jane Doe, who spoke first, and I thank her for her courage in coming forward. Domestic violence is dangerous and police involvement is often vital. I agree with Jenny Fleming-Ives that an immediate rapid response by the police is vital and will be compromised if we further reduce our police force. I agree with Marian Ben Artsdale that any future planning should be done in consultation with the Northampton Police Department. I agree with Jay Flightman that there should have been Northampton Police Department representation on this commission. The makeup of this commission is less than diverse, and it appears that the vast majority of members lean deeply left. At the beginning of each session, we are told that name calling will not be allowed, but you all sat there and allowed Jose Adastra to call the members of our police force racists, white supremacists, and wife beaters. That told me all I need to know about this commission. The knee-jerk response by the city council to cut $880,000 from the police budget was done too quickly, with no public input or serious consideration, and done only to appease the BLM mob that showed up on council members' front lawns and made them uncomfortable. I do agree that our police shouldn't have to deal with mental health or homeless issues, so by all means, hire some social workers with that $880,000. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracy. The next speaker is, Pat. Pat, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay, thank you so much for everyone. I'm Pat. I've been a resident in Northampton for 5 years because apparently I need to make credentials for some reason. I apologize. It's been a long day. I would like to first thank you all for your time on this commission. I know this has not been particularly enjoyable or easy for any of you, but I do believe that what you're doing here is a critical to the values of our city. I have sort of two things. I would like to use the remainder of my time after the comment to allow you guys to respond to, I believe it was Aaron S.'s rhetorical question, if you would like, but also to maybe give your thoughts on, in particular, the new department that was floated a couple weeks ago, and also like what your thoughts are on asking the city to do a more in-depth needs assessment. So for my comment, I would like to see language in the final report as a suggestion of a full citywide needs assessment done by paid consultants with the buy-in for data acquisition and all of that authorized by the city, because I think that would be very useful to see as a citizen where our funding really needs to be spent. I think that could be very illuminating as part of a roadmap going forward. And secondly, just as a question, what are your thoughts on the creation of a new department for the city for public safety? And like, I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts and your opinions on that.
Thank you, Pat. Can we respond at this point, or did you want to say more?
Yeah, go for it. I'm
Okay.
almost set. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple things. I have to admit, I do not recall the exact rhetorical question, so I'll lean on my colleague to help me with that one. But your other two questions about our feelings about creating a new department, yes, we have been talking about that for several weeks. I can tell you that we're planning a vision of that, a structure of that in our current deliberations, and our final report will talk about that more. I wish I could give you more information on that, not that it's a secret or anything, but we have a bunch of, or 3 different subcommittees that are all working on different pieces of that. So we have studied reports from Brattleboro, Ithaca, Austin, several other locations throughout the country to help inform how we should be doing something of this nature, where we have a department that maybe is called safety, maybe is called community care, that would remove from the burden of the police department some of the things that we would regard as non-police functions. And then the citywide assessment, and I want to be sensitive to time too. Yeah, I think I hope I'm speaking on behalf of the commissioners that is a great idea. And again, we're making recommendations to City Council, and so that would be a good one. And the rhetorical question, Dan, do you remember what that question was? Or Pat, do you remember what that question was?
Like, honestly, it's escaping me, so I apologize. Yeah. Like it was a little bit, but
well, sorry. we have about a minute and a half, but Dan, you seem to recall it.
So, I mean, the rhetorical question is sort of, what are we doing? And what is our purpose? And so I think one of the things to make clear is that our purpose, we don't actually get to make the rules for what happens. Our purpose has been to respond to a sort of national recognition and a local one that there are better ways to do some things. Nothing that we've done is necessarily defunding the police. It's not, just taking away money. And in fact, it has been sort of offering those ideas for what do we use the money that was already cut, but what else could we do to improve? Police departments across the country, or cities across the country, have been looking at the way they offer policing and community safety, and sort of what those things mean, what they need, who's the best person to respond to those kinds of calls, and who can respond to crises and emergencies really well. And there is a component of race in there. There's a component of class and gender, in how they all interact. And the answer is, there's not a great way, But the more you can create unarmed responses, the better the outcomes seem to be. And this is sort of the case. Cahoots is a great model just because it's so old. So it's decades old that they've had responses, and they've been able to show that they can make those improvements. But even, again, before 2020.
And Dan, can you finish your thoughts? So sorry.
Yep. I'll just say that we're sort of behind the 8 ball here in getting this done. That dozens and dozens of cities have started this work, and we're just doing it now for Northampton.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Pat, for the question. The next speaker is Shanna Fishel, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. Shanna?
Yes, Shauna Fishel from Leeds. So I know I'm towards the end of the speakers, and I just wanted to really thank you and appreciate everyone's emotional labor. I've been touched deeply by so many stories of your encounters with police and community members and other individuals that call Northampton home. And I include both perspectives when I'm saying thank you, because I think it comes back to, what do we think safety is? And who are we afraid of that is perpetuating our deep feeling of insecurity and unsafe? And I know that in each person here, in each family background, and going back generations and generations, there's trauma, there's fear. And we're all here just to make sure that our community is one that is cared for, and the people that care for some are the other community members. We're not talking about just departments and budget, but the people that are working and doing livelihood to go home to their families. And I really, really hope that you find that your labor that you put into here resonates with the people that create the budget and make the municipal decisions. There's so much more that I feel I can say about just my appreciation. And I know that the smart, caring, vocal people in our community and can come together and create a better future together. Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you, Shanna. Our next speaker is Gabe. Gabe, thank you.
Yep, just unmuting, thanks. Hi, my name is Gabe. I use they, them pronouns. I am a resident of Northampton, Ward 2. I first and foremost want to thank everyone on the commission for all of the incredible, amazing work you've been doing over the course of the last year. I want to thank everyone who's spoken today. I am going to keep this brief, but I just want to affirm my support for the requests made by the Northampton Abolition Now to reallocate funding that has been cut from the police, to create a Department of Community Care, to continue to remove funding from the police budget and invest it in creating community safety for all members of our community, to focus on providing housing and food and employment for folks who need it in our community. And I thank you all for the work that you're doing towards making these recommendations. I urge members of the City Council who are present at this meeting or listening to it later to really strongly consider these recommendations and enact them. And I thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Gabe. Our next speaker is Harry Harrison.
Hi, my name's Harry, and I don't want to divulge my location at this point, but I just have a quick question for the panel. I've heard a lot of people talking about defunding the police and getting rid of them altogether, changing the whole model, and sending social and medical help people to a scene rather than armed police. If that was to be the case, have you talked about this as to who would make the decision as to whether or not to send armed police to a situation? And the person or people who make the decision, not to send armed police, but to say this sounds more like a social mental problem. We will send unarmed people to try to deal with it. If something happens, if the person that they're going to see becomes violent and grabs a knife or an illegal firearm and starts shooting and all that, and the police aren't there to defend anybody, will the ones who made the decision not to send the police agree to be held culpable and liable for any damage or injuries that might occur because the police were not put there? And I do support the police myself. I'm all for keeping their strength up and everything. But if something happens, who's going to take responsibility for it? And that's my question. If you can answer that, fine.
Thank you, Harry. I'd be happy to answer, but I want to also ask any of the other commissioners if they would like to respond to that question. Any other commissioners? Booker Bush. Booker?
So thank you very much for that question. We actually have talked about it. 911 usually makes a triage decision on who needs to go. So they may decide that the fire department needs to go, or should the call be redirected. So that's already happening. By the way, that what happens in 911 dispatch is actually outside of the police department, which Chief Casper informed us that she does not have any management responsibility over that. Now, I think you're asking a bigger question, which is liability. If our improper triage is made, I guess the same thing could happen if they call the fire department and there's a person there with a weapon and the police aren't there. I guess I could ask if David Hoos has a sense of that, but we have not talked about that liability issue. I think we do spend a lot of time talking about having the right people at the right situation at the right time. And at the moment, my sense is that police are there and not necessarily the right people. But David, if you have an idea of what the liability would be as an answer, I'm calling on you here.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to venture an off-the-cuff response to that. It's not it's as with many things in the law, it's not as clear as you might seem to think it is. And but it's a fair question, Harry. Thank you for raising it. And I was going to respond in much the same way that Booker did, because our subcommittee has talked about that too. There's a certain amount of triaging that's going to go on no matter what model you use. The city is always going to be concerned about liability, but as long as people are properly trained and the decision is not a blatantly unreasonable one, my best off-the-cuff response would be that there's not going to be any, dramatic.
David and Booker, thank you. I think another commissioner has a hand raised. Josie?
Yeah, no, I definitely think that the issue of liability is something that should definitely be looked at. And when we're discussing the creation of these new department that would also have some sort of dispatch capability in order to triage the potential for like peer responders and all that good stuff. But I think that something that we should question is like, yes, we should hold like these future endeavors accountable, but what's really being held accountable in our current system, right? Like our police dispatchers now being held accountable for when they send a police officer to something that doesn't require an armed response and then an innocent person ends up getting killed, right? We don't have that conversation as well. So I think that's something that we should look at as a potentiality as well. Kind of look at what our current system does and what we want it to do in the future.
Thank you, Josie. Nick, I see your hand up and I just want to, there's only about a minute and a half left and I didn't know if Harry had a follow-up, but Nick?
Just very briefly, there are precedents that we would also turn to. There are other programs in the country that have been doing this for a number of years. I don't know the law, but we would definitely advise looking at what's happening at Cahoots in Eugene, Oregon, what Toronto is doing, what Austin is doing. So I just say that there are other ways to look at this.
Thank you, Nick. Harry, did you have any follow-up there with a minute left in your time? You should be able to unmute.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, thank you for addressing that. Let me change my view here. Is another option in the case of a call to send armed police to make sure a scene is secure, but if it does sound like a mental health issue, also send a mental health issue person, but not exclude the police. Have them go to all the calls as they normally would, and then if eventually it looks like it's handled by social people, then fine, they can leave or whatever. But one way to do it is just make sure they're there and that the scenes are secure for everybody. I don't know, but thank you for addressing that.
Okay, thank you, Harry. And Javier, you had your hand up. There was only 10 seconds. Did you want to respond very quickly to that comment? And I can't hear you. Yep, there we go.
Sorry. So as far as we know, in the numbers that we manage in relation to Cahoots was close to 0% incidence in relation to civilian-led mobile crisis intervention teams. We're talking about frontline workers, clients, or third parties that have been reported. So I do I do repeat what Nick said. When we're looking into this, it's not just guessing. We are certainly looking to well-established organizations already doing this. We are not looking necessarily to reinvent the wheel in these really specific and sensitive situations.
Thank you, Javier, and thank you, Harry. We'll move to our next speaker. Sorry.
I think they just put their hand down. So now we
it was, thank you. It was Dana, I think, but am I seeing no other speakers?
Correct.
At this point, thank you for that help, Dan. Let's going once, going twice, but I think I see a David now, whose hand came back up. So David.
Just as a note, David already spoke.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, David, thank you for reminding me of that. Sorry, David, we want to try to get in as many people as we can. So if I can move to, there was A from Northampton. Okay, A from Northampton, can you unmute yourself? Try again. There we go, maybe. A from Northampton. Okay, maybe we'll come back to you and go to K, peer-led. Can you unmute? There we go.
I did. Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Kay. I use she, her pronouns, and I live in a neighboring community to Northampton. I know this. Everybody has been incredibly patient and incredibly brave in sharing their stories. I just want to thank them and the commission for all of their hard work. So I won't keep everybody very long. I just want to share that I am a survivor of domestic violence and a survivor of addiction. And my experience was, if it wasn't for peer-led community support, I would not be alive right now. My experiences with the police were not helpful, but I am also a white cisgendered woman. And I know the experiences of my queer community, particularly trans and non-binary people of color, and the experiences of people of color are not the same as mine. So while my experiences did not lead to my recovery or my safety, it also did not harm me or leave me dead. So to those of you who have had positive experiences with police, I absolutely acknowledge your experiences and your pain. But I want to also suggest that empathy with people who have had different experiences is the way forward. For the commission, in terms of defunding police, taking money and providing it to affordable housing, to social services, to peers that are unconnected with the criminal justice system for response to drug crises and harm reduction, I think is the way forward to a thriving and safe and resilient community. And I will also say that for those who are frustrated and feel unsafe by walking the streets of Northampton and seeing people who are homeless and who are trying to raise money for survival, if we were to redirect funding to those people to try to make sure that they had a safe and stable home, then that would add to your safety as well. And once again, I'm not going to take up any more time, but I want to say once again, I recognize the incredible and dedicated work that the commission has done, and I just want to thank them very much for that work.
Thank you. I'm going to try again. A from Northampton. I've unmuted you. Can you unmute on your end?
They sent me a message in chat and we're having trouble. So I'm going to try this again. So if you bring up the Zoom interface so that it's the main thing on your screen, and hopefully you'll see a pop-up that asks to unmute. Okay, I'm going to try something else. Can you give it a try now? All right, just try to click the unmute button on the Zoom panel. It's still on the bottom left. Because they're seeing and clicking it. I'm really sorry here. I'm going to try. If you just try to unmute like you normally would, just hit that unmute button. Did we lose them?
It looks like it.
They're still here. Okay. There maybe two different. Looks like A may have joined twice, and that might be the issue here. So we're going to try another one.
Thank you, Dan.
And they're trying to look at their microphone settings. So I'm doing troubleshooting and tech support on the fly here.
It looks like you all were trying to unmute me again, and I think perhaps it's the wrong speaker.
Ah. I don't think so, but.
All right. Okay. So they're coming back in. All right. And so we're going to try again.
Hello.
Hey, hello.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you for bearing with me. I appreciate it.
No problem.
A hidden setting. Hi. Thank you so much for your time and all of the, emotional intensity that goes along with having these conversations. I really, really appreciate the work you're doing. I am a Cooley Dick baby. I have lived in and around Northampton for 30 years. Actually off of Nonotuck Street as well, as a prior constituent said, in Florence, and have generational experience in the area. This is my hometown and I love it here. And I wanted to really thank YP for bringing the historical context into this conversation with those quotes. as what I thought was a really potent mirror for primarily middle-aged and middle-class white residents feeling uncomfortable at the potential to divest from policing and allow ourselves to reimagine and enact changes in what community safety can mean and look like for all residents of the town, not just the white property and business holding residents. I also wanted to just point out something that I had heard, which was a previous caller mentioning that name calling would not be allowed, and then in the same breath calling the peacefully gathered groups of people who were, standing up for the movement for Black lives, calling them mobs. And I think it's really important. We are living in and moving from historical contexts all the time, which we are deciding how to continue or change every single day. And I really wanted us to remember this as we make these kind of decisions for our town, and as we process our own feelings of discomfort at the potential for new systems and things being not how we've seen them before or grown up with them in familiarity. And just really respect that, we are living and creating history every day. Based on the crime data and evidence on the efficacy of policing on crime, I wanted to voice support for the defunding of Northampton Police Department, not quote unquote diversifying the force just not that, and not overnight as well, as I think a lot of the fear is coming from, but incrementally with adequate reinvestment of that funding from NPD into community support programs to eradicate the need for the individuals to enact crimes of desperation in the first place. Also, I would support career training for prior officers, as yes, these people are residents who are police officers by job and not necessarily by birth or something like that, who will need another job. And I think that transition, that kind of training for career opportunities would be like a really smart way to care for all of the residents in this transition moment. And with time and investment to create rapid response alternatives in addition to those community support programs that can help people not be in the situation where they may need to enact crimes of desperation because the city is not meeting their most basic needs in any non-punitive kind of way, because we do know there are lots of social services and social programs, but a lot of them are wrapped up in punitive measures that can actually put somebody further along the line of desperation if they don't fit the exact experience of sobriety and of all these other kinds of things. So I just wanted to voice support for what a lot of people have been saying, and thank you all so much for taking the time to hear us all in such an important and timely and historically relevant and emotional issue. Thank you so much. Sorry about the technical difficulties.
No problem. Thank you, from Northampton. Appreciate you getting through. Just want to have a minute or two to see if we have anyone else that wants to speak before we close our public hearing. At the same time, I want to thank everyone who has spoken. I want to thank the commissioners. I particularly want to thank the translators. Really appreciate you all being here in the late morning and early afternoon with all of us. We appreciate all your input. So I'm seeing no one else who has a hand up to speak. No one else new, I want to say. So I can entertain a motion from commissioners to close the public hearing, and we'll take a roll call after that. You could unmute. Do I hear a motion to close?
Motion to close.
That's
Second.
one and a second from Javier. So I'm going to call the roll. Javier,
Yes.
Booker,
Yes.
Namdi,
Yes.
Josie,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Elizabeth. Elizabeth? I know Elizabeth is on a phone line, and I think I heard her say yes. Did anyone else hear her say? Elizabeth. Okay, I'll just move. I'll move to Carol. Thank you. Carol.
Yes.
Thank you. Alex.
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Nick.
Yes.
Cynthia, yes. Chris.
Yes.
Oh, great. So that closes our third and final public hearing for the Northampton Police Commission. And again, I want to thank you all. Please continue to know that you can contact us in the chat, the name of the individual who will, you can send them anything, emails, letters, and we will get that information. And the schedule of our meetings and our agendas for the remaining time that we're on the commission are posted on the City of Northampton website. So again, thank you all very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Cynthia and Dan.
Thanks,
For the
everybody.
interpreters.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a great afternoon.